And we're live. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Worldwide Wednesday podcast. My name is Shiny,
I'm your co-host, Sovereign.
and today is episode 5. Damn, 5 episodes already.
That's a whole month's worth.
It flew by kind of fast, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, this whole year is crazy. Like, honestly, after 2020, this year is gonna be complete and total whiplash.
Yeah. I mean, we're almost at 2022. It's honestly kind of ridiculous how fast this year's gone by.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. But we want to thank you for being with us for this past month. The channel has been seeing a lot of growth. We see that you guys are really liking the videos that are coming out, so we really appreciate your support. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow and subscribe on Twitch, and like and follow all of our social media. But overall, we really want to thank you for the support you guys have been giving
Yeah,
us.
don't forget to ring that bell. It does something important. Haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, it does something.
It definitely does a thing to help us out.
Yeah. But so to start off today's episode, I want to talk about Dune.
Oh yes, I've been waiting to talk about this ever since I saw that movie.
Yeah,
I've been waiting for you to watch it.
yeah. So I finally got around to watching Dune, and it's an amazing movie. I absolutely loved it.
The one thing that has been in my mind is that this is the most expensive looking movie I've ever seen. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sure like it had a moderate budget compared to most sci-fi films, but this one, just the design, the costuming, the lighting, everything, it looked so clean and it portrayed exactly what it wanted to. Like, you could barely tell that any CG was used in the movie whatsoever.
yeah, I totally agree. For one, the vibe it gave me aesthetically is remember in The Last Jedi when Holdo rammed her ship straight through the Star Destroyer?
You mean
And that
one
and
of the few good scenes in the movie?
debatable. Anyways. But during that scene, just that wide shot of her tearing through the Star Destroyer, that aesthetic is what I had for the entirety of Dune. It was that beautiful for me.
Honestly, I would go even further and say, honestly, I wouldn't even say that was the pinnacle of The Last Jedi. I would honestly say that the best looking shot in that movie was Luke looking down the what were they? The AT-AT walkers, were they?
Oh yeah, when he was looking down on the First Order walkers, whatever they were.
Yeah, that was a beautiful shot.
It was. But back to Dune. Overall, I found Dune to be just so beautiful. Like I really liked how much the blue eyes of the Fremen contrasted like the just the brightness of everything else. Like the Fremen's blue eyes were so bright that it really does give off that it's something that is caused by an external source, being like the spice. And I really did like that.
Yeah, honestly, for me, what stood out was just the world building. Like, it had a lot to throw at you. Honestly, you didn't leave the theater thinking that you missed anything.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it doesn't like spoon feed you, but it has a lot to throw at you. And I think it does a really good job explaining pretty much everything.
Yeah, it really did. And the craziest part is that they had all of that and they've only adapted one half of the first Dune book.
No way, it's only one half.
Yeah, this is only like where the movie ends is the halfway point of the first Dune book.
Yeah.
They haven't even gone to the second book, which is Dune Messiah.
Yeah, which is astonishing because I feel like there's so much more because of how much that we absorbed in.
Yeah.
Like I forget like this isn't like a full series. Like, it was just a book that came out in the 60s.
It is a full series.
I mean, yeah, like
Yeah.
the whole series is contained within the 60s, right?
Uh, well, it's not in the 1960s by our standards.
No, I mean like released in the 60s.
60s and 70s. But there are after the original author died, I believe it's his brother or son. They have the same last name. That's been continuing with spin-offs.
Okay.
Yeah, and those spin-offs are still releasing. Because I know the original 6 Dune books, they do end on a cliffhanger because unfortunately the author, I believe his name is Frank Herman?
Uh,
I believe he passed away while working on the seventh book.
yeah,
So Dune, the sixth book ends on a cliffhanger. So I'm really interested in seeing if we ever get to that point with the Dune movies, how they'll handle the fact that it ends on a cliffhanger.
yeah. Honestly, this was my first introduction to the whole series as a whole, if I'll be honest.
Yeah, on no, it was my first introduction as well, and I can totally see why famous series such as Warhammer 40K and Star Wars take a lot of inspiration from Dune
Yeah,
because it really set the mold. I mean, a galactic empire in the Imperium, which also, kind of which also kind of inspires the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40K.
right.
Then you also have the desert planet, obviously inspiring Tatooine,
Yeah,
and even the Bene Gesserit. They're kind of like the Jedi in a way.
yeah. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, they're like a religious cult. They're like a mixture of the Jedi and the Sith. More like the Sith in the sense that they're the ones controlling everything with how they're like doing their whole selective breeding process to bring about the chosen one, kind of like how the Sith do in Star Wars. But they're kind of like the Jedi in the sense that they're this massive order that's intertwined with like the government.
Yeah, I can't really identify which one they more side as, like as far as what they would later inspire in Star Wars.
Yeah, I think they inspire both because
Yeah, probably.
yeah,
Just
but
probably just different interpretations that split off.
yeah, but honestly, I loved it. I love the acting in the movie too.
Yeah, the acting was. I wouldn't say the acting was weak, but it wasn't like the standout of the film. I would say the acting was still really good. Just that
Yeah,
wasn't like what's made the movie an A for me.
yeah. I like Jason Momoa's character Duncan Idaho.
He was a pretty easy character because he wasn't too complex. So, but I think they did get the right actor for
Yeah. Um, I am just really interested in seeing where it's going forward because Paul has the ability to see into the future, but it's not just a linear path. He sees multiple futures,
him. Yeah,
and he gets to really like pick and choose from what future he sees to carve his own future in a way. And I find that to be very interesting and a very interesting spin on character can see into the future.
yeah, because most of the time when you see like prophecy, destiny, um, and that kind of stuff, a very linear storyline. But yeah, I'm very open to the idea that this could be like there could be multiple paths to the end. And I mean, this being like a 60-year-old novel, uh, pretty much know where this is going. The movie practically implied where the movie was going with this,
Yeah.
going with him creating a war against the entire Imperium.
Yeah, he's gonna lead a holy war against the Imperium in his name, and that's gonna be really interesting because it's very clearly framed as a bad thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, because
because
the movie doesn't like imply at all that what he's doing is good, because he's pretty much just pushed himself into that because that's the one path that he sees. Because it doesn't like he's not doing it for like I guess self-righteous isn't the correct word. He's not doing it for like a
an
more
for a moral
for
good.
a moral good, right?
This is through and through. This is revenge.
Yeah,
The Imperium has screwed him and his family over, so he's going to lead the Fremen and be their messiah. And he's basically going to just lead a holy war across the universe.
right.
And I'm up to Dune Messiah currently. I've been listening to audiobooks. And so far, in the little bit of Dune Messiah that I've been in, this holy war has a lot of casualties. Like, far bigger than any war that you can imagine in our history. The casualties are exponentially higher.
Could you compare it to any in fiction?
Not on the level of the 365 trillion killed in the Yuzan Vong War from Star Wars, but about several billion are dead. Like tens of billions of humans
Yeah.
across the universe
Did,
die in this holy war.
did you have to dive into the extended universe for that one?
Yes, yes, I did. But
Okay.
The Yuzan Vong War in Star Wars is a whole other can of worms. But yes, they did kill about there was 1 trillion death for every day there was in our normal calendar.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I honestly might jump on and just read the original novel as well.
Yeah, it's honestly really interesting. And for one, there are some things that are conveyed a bit better through the novels. Like, for example, the head lady of the Bene Gesserit, her relationship with Jessica is a lot more. It's a lot less antagonistic than the movie portrays it. Like, yes, there is antagonisms between them, but it's more of like they love each other in the way that a master loves her student, but also they have a lot of conflict because it's like a cult, and Jessica is clearly going against the cult.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they even mention it by the fact that Jessica has a boy instead of producing daughters.
Or
It,
I don't even think the issue was that she produced a boy, is that she taught a, a male child their ways, if I'm interpreting the movie correctly.
no, it's specifically the fact that he's a boy. As that the plan is that she's supposed to produce a daughter, and the daughter is supposed to be married off to the Harkonnens,
Hmm.
and then that daughter gives birth to a male, and
Yeah.
that male becomes Jesus.
Yeah, which the whole idea that they're controlling everything from like a fourth dimensional perspective, like they have a whole view of time itself, is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it well, not even then. Their abilities are just Paul's, but to a lesser extent. But because there's so many of them, they're able to like see the pathways to what they want. But clearly, they can't see it all because they never predicted Jessica giving birth to Paul.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Do you think they even predicted uh, the betrayal that happened on what's the planet called again?
Uh, Arrakis?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Like, everyone knew that the Atreides were supposed to die on Arrakis. I mean, even Paul's father, Leto, he knew that they were going to die on Arrakis.
Yeah.
Like, it was fairly obvious that Arrakis was a trap to everyone, but it's like Leto said, this is an offer you can't refuse. When the Emperor tells you to lead a planet, you go do it.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, the fact that the whole planet was practically sabotaged
The Harkonnens.
by the Harkonnens, the kingdom that ruled it beforehand, before it was handed off. It was clear sabotage, and it was just no hope from there.
Yeah, it was pretty much no hope. And but I still really liked it. I liked Gurney, played by Josh Brolin.
They really just had some really like high power or high level
Actors.
actors.
Yeah, I mean, it deserves it.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it really deserves it. I really like, I can't pronounce his name, but the guy that plays Paul, I really liked him in the role. I felt like he really conveyed the feelings that Paul had, the feelings of conflict and anger and fear.
it actually took me a while to get used to it because at the beginning it really didn't feel like I could understand his character more than just the everyman trying to interpret this world as like our vector into this new universe. But then in the later half, after the attack on Arrakis, I could actually see that forming. So I do agree with you, but I do think it takes some time for that to develop.
Yeah, that's fair. What did you think of the voice?
Yeah, that was something else.
The voice as a power is so broken, but I love the little details that they had, like bringing someone who's deaf on board to kill Jessica and Paul, specifically to counter the fact that they know Jessica can use the voice. Not much good that you can do when two other people in the room are still not deaf.
Yeah, I mean that also probably inspired a lot of like of
That
the Jedi.
definitely that inspired the Jedi mind trick through and through.
Like it's obvious the connection that Star Wars stole that from Dune,
Yeah,
without a doubt.
it was. Oh my god, I just love where she like pulls it down. She's like, "Kill him, free me," and you just see the guy just fucking like slit his neck and throw him out.
Like no hesitation whatsoever.
I just love it.
But yeah, it's an absolutely busted power.
Yeah, I really liked how the Reverend Mother, how she used it on Paul in the beginning, where you just see him just like almost like when Goku first went Ultra Instinct Sign, just the world around him just like flashes forward and he's just there. That
Honestly,
was Paul.
I do want to talk about that scene as a whole because that was a really tense scene for sure.
Oh yeah,
Like like I go into the theater and I'm like, okay, this is a 2.5 hour movie. This character's not dying, but I don't know that scene. It kind of threw you for a loop.
it was so good, and it's especially good how well they interpreted it after going back and reading the book because it's so intense. Like he pulls his hand away, and in the book, it's described as the most unimaginable burning on just known to existence. Like he expects his hand to be burned to a crisp, that there'll be nothing but ash.
But in the movie was I'm trying to I feel like I vaguely remember this. There was like no music at all, if I remember correctly,
I don't think there was music,
because
but
that
they
did
started to build it up as he started to like start screaming.
yeah
The
because
music
this
started coming in.
because that silence I think really did help with that scene because I think music would have ruined that scene.
Yeah,
But the fact that they waited helped it so much.
yeah, and I also just liked how just the way she was able to get him in that position by using the voice on him, getting him to put his hand in the box, and then holding a poison needle to his neck, ensuring that he fails, he dies. No two ways about it.
Right.
And I really liked that. That scene overall was just
Yeah.
very well done, especially with Jessica standing outside, letting it happen, knowing that her son can die, but just really just praying that he doesn't.
Because it was portrayed pretty well that she was helpless to manip- or to guide that scenario whatsoever. She
Yeah,
couldn't do anything about it.
yeah. I imagine that if she tried to use the voice on the Reverend Mother, it would have just failed.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it was really good.
I mean, also the fact that she was locked out of the room in the first place.
She wasn't locked out. She was there to stop other people from getting it.
Right.
She was gonna kill
And by
anybody that
locked
tried.
out, I mean the voice was used on her to keep her out of the room.
Yeah. I don't even think it was the voice that was used. I think it's just mainly her loyalty to the Bene Gesserit because she was. I don't think it was the voice being used on her because whenever we see the voice being used, you hear the monstrous echoey voice. But
That
when
is
it
fair.
came to Jessica, I think it was more that she knows that this has to happen because
Yeah.
she's gone through it.
Yeah. I mean, the threat, I mean, is
Yeah.
still there.
Oh yeah. What did you think of Leto as a character?
You'll have to.
Leto is Paul's dad.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because he was only around for half the movie. I'm so sorry. I forget names so fast.
Yeah.
But um, see, honestly, I forget a lot that happens in the first half because honestly, the second half of the movie is what stuck with me.
So
Because like the
yeah.
only stuff that I remember from the first half is like the design of it, which I cannot stop describing how much I absolutely love. But I mean, he does his job. Honestly, there weren't really any bad actors in this movie whatsoever.
Yeah. I really like.
There was
Yeah.
only average to really good actors, honestly.
Yeah. I really liked Leto. I really liked how he interacts with Paul in the sense that all he ever wants for Paul is to just be his son.
Yeah,
Like while he does want Paul to lead, he understands that if it ever came to a point where Paul was given the choice and he didn't choose it, he'd be fine with it.
right.
Unfortunately, we know Paul will lead, and it will not be good.
Yeah.
But
I do also like how like most of the characters do interact with each other. Like this is a living, breathing world. Like
yeah,
you can buy that this is all happening within this fictional universe.
yeah, I really liked how they portrayed, especially Dr. Yue
Oh
and
yeah,
his betrayal. I really liked it because it seemed so human in the sense where he was like, I'm betraying you. I'm telling you I'm betraying, but I will give you a chance to get revenge. Because it makes more sense that if someone kidnapped your wife and is holding them hostage, you don't just do whatever you gotta do for them and then fuck off. If you have the power to screw them over, you will try and screw them over while you're doing what they want.
which is actually very rewarding because he never gets his reward for the sabotage.
Yeah, he doesn't. He gets. I mean, his wife was. I kind of figured that his wife was already dead to begin with.
I mean, yeah, considering how they kind of portrayed I guess, main antagonist of the movie.
Yeah, but after he was, but it was really good to just see him just bite down and just kill almost everyone.
Yeah,
The only reason the head Harkonnen even lives is because he can levitate.
pretty much. Honestly, when I saw him levitate for the first time, I thought he had really long legs. Not gonna
No,
lie,
I did too. I thought he
like
had
that
really
shot
long.
was so confusing
I
because
thought he had really long legs. I was like,
like that was the one shot I was kind of iffy on because
the
because the long rope was like, okay, does this guy just have really long legs? Because that does not fit with anything that I've seen in this movie.
like seeing him in full. It reminded me of the scene from Team Four Star where Frieza's like, "I was led to believe your species survived on nothing but water. How is he so fat? Like, how is he that big? Like, I understand how he can levitate. It's because of the stuff that's on his spine that goes all the way to the ground.
Right.
But I'm like, Jesus, man, he is just giant. And it did save him because he was able to just. I just imagine him floating up to the ceiling like a balloon and just hitting the corner of the wall and not being able to move. But hey, it saved him.
Hey,
Barely.
director's cut. We're gonna see it in the director's
Oh my god.
cut.
Oh my god. I know they go into detail about why he's so fat in the books, but God, he's so big.
We do not body shame here.
No, it's not body shaming.
We,
It's just, he's just a giant. Like, Dave Bautista in Dune, his character is already a pretty big character. Like, he's very big and physically imposing, but
yeah.
his uncle is massive. And you're like, that is an intimidating person. Like, if I saw him, if I lived in the Dune world and I saw him, I'd probably like just fucking shit myself. Like, that is a massive person.
Because I mean, in the Dune universe, because it deviates from Star Wars in this fact, most don't really, most races don't really deviate from the humanoid like standard, right? Like they mostly look like humans, if I'm not mistaken, based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, if Dune is the one to inspire 40K, then I imagine it is that it's a bunch of a bunch of humans from Earth. Well, yes, I believe they're all humans because they're all from Earth. They've
Yeah.
just spread across the universe. Because the Atreides family is actually traces their bloodline back to ancient Greece.
Huh.
Yeah. And the Harkonnens, I believe, trace their bloodline all the way back to Germany.
Ah. Okay.
Oh,
What?
Germany. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see where my mind was going with that.
Yeah, I actually just got that. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn. That is pretty good.
I mean, yeah, this was a really well put together movie, and I
Yeah.
assume the books are just as good. Because honestly, I might pick them up just because
Yeah.
of the fact I saw this movie.
I listened to an interview that the author gave when talking about his thought process for creating the second book. And he talks about how he talks about how charismatic leaders should have a warning on them for how dangerous they can be. Like he talked about how John F. Kennedy was probably the most dangerous president that we had had up to the point in his life, because this was written in the 60s, so John F. Kennedy was a very recent president, and how he was such a charismatic president, yet he led us to Vietnam. And then he even talks about Watergate, which happened later on. He talks about how Richard Nixon with Watergate shows exactly why we need to distrust the government and its charismatic leaders. And he then goes on to talk about how a charismatic leader like Hitler can bring the population to fully embrace anti-Semitism to the point of murdering millions of Jewish and Romani people.
Yeah.
So if that is any indication for how the future will go, Paul is going to be an absolute monster in the worst ways possible, and I cannot wait to see it.
Oh, I can't wait to see how audiences would react to it because this movie, I think it did surprisingly well because I believe they just greenlit the sequel.
Yeah. Um.
Because there was a lot of question in the air about whether or not a sequel would be greenlit. Thankfully, we did get news that that has happened.
Yes. So there's one thing I do want to address because it kind of ties into how Paul is probably going to be pretty fucking evil. But
Yeah,
some people were saying how this story was quote unquote problematic because of the fact that the Bene Gesserit, from what we've seen, is an all-white Illuminati-esque organization trying to bring about a white Superman, pretty much. Paul is basically supposed to be like a super soldier that will be their messiah, and then Paul ends up leading a group of brown-skinned individuals like a white savior.
mm.
And while I can definitely see that, I believe in a way that's the point,
Because
and that it's not good. Like this is like everything they said I believe is completely accurate, and some say it's problematic, and I'm saying no, that's the point.
and we should elaborate into this to why we feel this way. Because in all honesty, the movie doesn't portray this as a good deed at all. So that's why it's not problematic. Not because this isn't described as like like a hero's journey in the sense that this is the way to beat the bad guy. No, this is a story telling about how a would you describe him as like a fascist uprising?
So here's how I would more describe it. I don't.
Because he doesn't really rule over people. He's just a harbinger of war.
So here's how. So here's how I interpreted this actually. So while he is interpreted as the hero, we're slowly seeing, especially towards the end where he kills that other Fremen in the duel,
Right.
that his old self, that would have been a kind and caring person, that could have been a compassionate ruler, died.
Yeah.
He died when the he died when like Paul Atreides as we know him is dead
Yeah,
after killing that man.
because he really, I mean, in that fight alone, he didn't really show any signs of compassion. Like not even in the beginning.
Well, he did show compassion in the
Like,
beginning
but it
by
was
asking him.
very little.
He was asking him
But
to
he,
yield, but then when the reality dawned on him that there is no yielding, only death, he very quickly was able to.
yeah, like there was no way like he was escaping that being a compassionate person.
Yeah,
There
he
was
then.
there was no escape for
Yeah, because if you notice through his future sight, the guy he duels, he was his friend and master in one future. And so he believes that, oh, if I spare him, it'll be fine because I know in the future that he'll be my friend. But no, he kills him and he then realizes, I don't save people, I kill people.
him. Yeah,
That
which
was just a future in which he was my friend, but that's not my future.
yeah, yeah. But to go back to what we were saying earlier, definitely. Um, now I even forgot what we were talking about.
Dune, being
The being
white savior.
problematic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even like even as like a harbinger of war. This is not supposed to be interpreted as a good thing throughout this entirety of the story. So I don't really understand why people are interpreting this as problematic and can only chalk it up to bad media interpretation.
yeah. For one, like while I do see how they kind of do paint him as a hero at times, which is normal for the protagonist to be framed in somewhat of a heroic light, I feel that because people just aren't familiar with the source material, they kind of walked into this and were like, "What is this?" Not knowing that, oh, that's the point, and it only goes downhill from there.
Yeah,
Like like the universe isn't gonna be saved. Like this isn't like Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker bring balance to the Force type shit. This is more like this is a normal person, but we're gonna make him light Yagami with an army.
oh god. Yeah, because the movie really does a good job at showing, like through the different futures, that this is not a happy ending.
Yeah. And I really do feel for him because he does freak out at the realization that this will happen, that he will be just a warlord. He will be a
Yeah,
warlord that will wage a jihad across the universe in his father's name.
yeah.
And I know from at least where I am in the books that, oh boy, it is not good. Like the results that I believe when adapted into movie form, people are going to be absolutely livid,
Oh
in
yeah,
my opinion, because they're going to feel that they were led, that Paul was some type of ordinary hero, and then seeing him basically become, I wouldn't say he's the next Hitler. I would say he's the next Genghis Khan.
oh yeah.
So seeing him become the next Genghis Khan, I believe people are going to lose their minds.
I just hope people approach this in an intelligent way because this was because I only heard about this discourse an hour before we started recording, so which kind of astonished me because the movie because I felt that I understood it entirely that he was going to be a villain in the sequels.
Yeah,
So I was kind of confused when I heard that
yeah.
when you first told me about that,
I think it's just some people aren't used to really villain protagonists in the sense that
which is weird considering we just got Joker.
no, but here's how, in my opinion, Paul as a villain protagonist will differ from Joker. Joker is a villain protagonist because we know already through pop culture that Joker's a villain.
Yeah. Well,
Paul Atreides isn't well known in pop culture, so he will be interpreted as another Luke Skywalker, not knowing that this is far, far different than Luke Skywalker. Like, this will be during, like, so there is a period in the expanded universe where Luke Skywalker falls to the dark side and he becomes Emperor Palpatine's right hand. Paul is that, but instead of it being Palpatine's apprentice, he is Palpatine. He was Luke Skywalker and turned into Palpatine. That's what Paul is, and I don't think people are ready for that.
yeah, this I'm definitely excited to see how people are going to react to the sequel because
Yeah, because I can also see how some people are coding the Fremen, like the Fremen as kind of like the indigenous population that's being colonized,
because they're pretty much like you
because
could
they are.
because you could say like that they live in the sand. That's where they live, and I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I can see where they're coming at from that, but you're
yeah.
missing the whole point of the movie.
Like the Fremen population, yes, is this indigenous population, and yes, they are dealing with colonization, but no, absolutely not. Is it going to be a situation where it's this white savior leading them to freedom? This is going to be a warlord leading them to conquest.
Right.
I mean, we see it. We see when he returns to his home planet. He is he has a whole war bound with him. Like this is going like I really cannot wait until part 2 comes out because that will be the second book. And that's going to describe the second not the second half of the first book, which will describe his revenge campaign before Dune Messiah, where where I am in Dune Messiah, this is after he has succeeded in the first part of his revenge,
Yeah.
which is waging war on Arrakis.
Yeah.
But overall, I think this movie is going to be. I thought this movie was great. I cannot wait for the sequel, and the books right now have me gripped. Like it is, I for one, I could see how it's so inspirational because the ideas that come from this book, knowing that it was the first of its kind, I could see how it inspires modern day sci-fi. And it is a real shame that it's not as well known in pop culture
Because most people interpret Star Wars as the birth of the sci-fi genre.
of the space opera, yeah.
Yeah,
But no, Dune inspired Star Wars. Like I remember I saw criticisms from some people saying this is a Star Wars ripoff.
when no, Star Wars ripped it off.
Yeah, I was like, this is no Star Wars ripoff.
This
This
is
is what made Star Wars Star Wars. Without Dune, there is no Star Wars in the way that we know it.
yeah,
Because I mean, if you look back at the original draft of Star Wars, it was originally titled Luke's Star Killer and the Force of the Wills. And the Wills in Star Wars mythology are a Jenna Bessarit type group of individuals that watch and minorly control the galaxy from the sidelines, like the Bene Gesserit.
that's interesting.
So you can totally see where George Lucas was getting his inspiration. I mean, we still see it with the politics that were teased during the original trilogy that we then come to see in fruition in the prequel trilogy. The Messiah of the Chosen One to the Jedi between Anakin and Luke. Tatooine as a whole, the Tusken Raiders most definitely being a reference to the Fremen, the concept of spice being a drug, which is also a drug in the Star Wars universe. Jabba the Hutt, I am convinced was inspired by the Harkonnen chief,
All right.
and I just you can see it. You can see where George Lucas was inspired by this, just in the first movie.
Yeah. I would say this movie was probably a 9 out of 10 for me.
Oh yeah, definitely a 9 out of 10. Cannot wait for part 2, and right now it's my number 1 movie of 2021.
I did want to talk about that because at this point, of all the movies I've seen this year, this is probably the best, but
I,
because of the past decade, my favorite movie of all time was The Lighthouse, which was a 10 out of 10 for me.
oh yeah, Lighthouse. I rewatched
Because,
it over the weekend, and it's still amazing.
yeah, but because I would say I'm not disappointed by this movie. This movie is phenomenal in every aspect, but it wasn't a 10 out of 10 for me just because of like minor things here and there. Because it really didn't like break the mold, but it was the best example of anything this genre has to offer.
Yeah, and I have to go back and watch the 1984 version of this movie.
I was told to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, I was told that it was bad, but I've also heard that it's campy.
I don't think campiness fits this universe. I'm sorry, I don't.
I don't think it does, and from what I've seen, the scenes that I have seen from the 1984 version,
I've
yeah,
I've seen one clip from the 1984 version, and it was a point where they used the voice, and it was just, oh, it was so goofy. I couldn't take it seriously.
yeah.
Because
I think
see,
this modern interpretation definitely fits the vibe of this franchise.
yeah, which the fact that it could be interpreted properly 60 years later was pretty astonishing. Like, walking out of the theater, I was surprised that it was an IP from 1960.
It's so good.
Yeah,
I cannot wait. Like the from what little fight scenes we saw in this movie, I know that in the future it's only gonna get better.
yeah, which thankfully they didn't make this like a 300 style fight mess of a movie because it focused a lot on the world building, the politics, and just the journey to where the movie ends.
There's one thing that I wish they brought up, which I know some people are complaining about, but was answered in the books. The shields that they use and why they use swords. The shields that they use, if blasted with plasma, causes a nuclear explosion. That is why everyone fights with swords, as
Yeah,
it's the only way you can kill someone through the shield without setting off a nuke.
that is one thing I did want to talk about because there were a lot of like they put a lot of details into that because in the first like training sequence they show like it like the shield reacting when they when what was his name when
Gurney?
yeah when he was helping Paul get up the when he was helping them get up, the shields reacted to each other when they were grabbing each other. The attention to detail on that was pretty good.
Yeah, I
I
really
did
like
like that little detail, despite my little knowledge on the universe as a whole at that point.
Yeah, because I did wonder. I was like, huh, why is it that they use swords? I mean, is it the rule of cool, or is there actually a reason? And turns out there is a reason. They're all walking nukes.
Honestly, I don't even think like Rule of Cool even inspired half this universe. This universe was really well thought out.
Yeah, in which I just realized that Star Wars probably got the bombastic sword fights from Dune as well. Oh my god, this movie. This franchise, I can see how it inspired an entire genre.
I would just say people need to go watch it because these movies need to do good. We need to have more movies like this.
Yes, because for as good as the MCU is and superhero movies, we need movies like this that tell stories in such unique ways that doesn't involve, the tie-ins as much.
Yeah,
Like Marvel movies are great. They're great because they tie into each other, which gives you a sense of reward for watching all of the movies and being rewarded by it. I mean, that's why No Way Home is so hyped. It's literally rewarding all the fans from previous Spider-Man films. But this is a different type of reward that you get.
because I do want to touch back on the fact that this is probably the best movie of this year. Because so far, with the exception of maybe looking into the future, maybe No Way Home, were there any movies that good this year?
I mean, there was the Suicide Squad,
I,
and there
I
was Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi was, I would say the only thing holding Shang-Chi back is the fact that it adheres heavily to the Marvel formula, but it is, I would say, the best example of that formula, just like how Dune is the best example of the would this be a space opera?
This is a space opera
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it's the best example of the space opera genre. I would say Shang-Chi falls well into the Marvel formula, where it is the best example of that formula. The Suicide Squad was a very great comedy. I did love that very much, especially considering what it had to build from with the original Suicide Squad and how that one was practically unwatchable.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, really, no other movies this year came out that
Wait, there was one. The animated Injustice movie.
don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started on that
Fine.
because that movie is terrible and I get nothing but clips recommended to me on my YouTube feed every single day of that goddamn movie and I'm tired of it.
Oh god. Yes, let's not get into Injustice and why it's a dumpster fire. But overall, you guys can probably tell we really like Dune. We think
Yeah.
it's a great movie. We think it's a great franchise, and we're really looking to see more from it.
Okay.
So, oh my god. Moving on, since we're on the topic of like big movies, Eternals comes out tomorrow.
Which also dives into the fact that this year went by really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we were getting like 5 Marvel movies, 4 from the MCU, 1 from Sony, and like 5 Marvel shows, and we're already on the second to last movie.
Remember when, like you feel like WandaVision didn't even come out that long ago.
Yeah, I remember when WandaVision first came out. That was in January, and we're in November. Eternals drops tomorrow. Hawkeye drops in 3 weeks. Jeez, where's the time gone? But Eternals, what is your final predictions going into this movie releasing tomorrow?
This movie is going to be just fine. I think
Yeah,
this is going to be a good movie.
I think it'll be good. I think it'll be unique and that it'll stray from the typical Marvel formula.
Oh, for sure.
Because, one, this is a team movie where the team is introduced from the very beginning.
Yeah. So practically pretty comparable to the Suicide Squad and how it had to introduce every single character with the exception of Harley.
Yeah, and Rick.
Fair. But they actually had to rebuild his character, so they did kind of reintroduce him. Because his character was pretty bad, not gonna lie, in the first movie.
Yeah.
But going back to the Eternals, yeah, I I'm kind of baffled by all the review bombing.
Listen, we all know why the review bombings is happening. There's gay people and there's non-white people.
Don't we love when that happens?
Yeah, I mean, you know the two genders, male and political.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the two genders, male and political. The two races, white and political. And of course, the two sexualities, straight and political.
Oh, God. And I do want to bring out one of the tweets that one of the main actors,
It's the actor for Kingo. His name escapes me, though.
yeah, but he practically said that the fact that we're getting review bombed means that we're upsetting the right people,
Yeah.
which brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, these are the same people that review bombed Shang-Chi and Black Widow and Captain Marvel. Probably did try to do it with Black Panther, but at the time, Marvel movies becoming culture war issues wasn't that big yet.
You know, that hit around Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
That was the big one because I believe this whole like infestation of people giving their political or like fighting against the politics and pop culture happened back in 2016.
Yeah. Oh, so the actor's name is Kumail
Nanjiani, right?
Yes. Kumail Nanjiani.
Somehow I remember the last name, but not the first name.
Yes. And I'm just going to say this right now. He's a gorgeous
Oh God.
man. He is. He just is.
I can't speak as a straight person, but
He is.
I know how much he's built up, but I won't disagree with you there.
Yes. Speaking of another great man that's in this movie, Don Lee, who's playing Gilgamesh. I love him because he's in Train to Busan, which is the best zombie movie ever to be created.
Really?
Yes. He plays one of the best characters in Train to Busan, and I'm really glad to see him in this Marvel movie. He's playing Gilgamesh, so we know he's going to be just a brute, a strong man, and I love to see it.
Yeah, because this movie also does have a lot of like high name actors in it as
Yeah,
well,
Angelina Jolie is in it
which is surprising. They got her in an MCU movie as a main character.
at this point. Being in an MCU movie is just another series you just gotta be in.
Right. Because, I mean, mostly DC was bringing in all the people because the MCU really just brought people from the bottom up.
Yeah,
'Cause
like people that were in good movies but weren't known.
they weren't
yet.
like household names. Like Robert Downey Jr. was like,
He had just come out of his rehab.
yeah. And the fact that he practically lived through his rehab or lived through his character arc both in real life and in the movies
Yeah.
is kind of like why we respect him as an actor.
Yeah, and Chris Evans, while he was in the horrible Fantastic Four movies, he was in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, alongside Brie Larson, actually.
Oh yeah, I do remember that movie. I actually watched that recently this year.
Yeah, they were in both of them were in the movie, and they were both good in the movie.
Oh, they were. I mean, honestly, all the actors in that movie were phenomenal.
It still astonishes me how Scott got Brie Larson's character.
That wasn't Brie Larson. Brie Larson was the singer. Wasn't that Mary something?
No, Brie Larson was his singer X.
Oh, Singer X. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I still don't understand how that was his ex.
Especially when the movie kind of portrays him as kind of an incel.
Let's not go there.
Let's be fair here. He is.
Did he give off libertarian guy with Asian wives type vibes? Yes. Yes, he did. But he grew.
Yeah.
But she was underage.
Let's not talk about that aspect of the movie.
And also, he got with her in the comics.
I mean, yeah.
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 Either way, back to Eternals. I'm looking forward to this movie. What I think will happen overall is a lot of people are saying Icarus is going to be the main villain. Which, you know what? Probably.
Yeah,
Probably. I mean, no one shoots laser eyes like that, like he does in the trailer, and not be a villain. Like,
because I would have to rethink that because I mean, the only like big bad that we see is, I mean, not even big bad, like the only intimidating force we see in the trailers is really the giant celestial.
Yeah, we see the giant celestial. We do see Crow, who is the sentient deviant that does capture Angelina Jolie's character Athena.
Yeah,
That's probably one of the big bads.
yeah.
But we haven't seen him so much in trailer footage, which is why I'm thinking Icarus may actually be the big bad. Especially with theories running around that Icarus kills Ajak, Selma Hayek's character, which that would suck if it's true. Selma Hayek looks amazing in this film, and I would hope that she's in it for long. But if the theories are true and he does kill her in the beginning of the movie, that sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that even though yes, I know the plot has leaked at this point, the Icarus kills Ajax theory has been around since the first trailer dropped. So it's not necessarily something born from leaks. It's been something that's been theorized ever since we first saw the trailer and noticed that Ajax only seemed to appear in what would be considered flashbacks. But yeah.
So I do want to address one thing is the runtime. So I'm looking here on the IMDb page, and it looks
Yeah.
like the runtime is about 2 hours and 37 minutes.
Yeah, that's longer than Endgame.
No, Endgame is 3 hours and 2 minutes.
Endgame is 3 hours?
Endgame is 3 hours.
Are you sure about
Yeah, I've even got it here. Yeah,
that?
three
Endgame?
yeah, 3 hours and 2 minutes.
I remember hearing Eternals was longer than Endgame.
Well, Eternals is definitely going to be longer than any other MCU film because Shang-Chi was 2 hours and 12 minutes. Uh, Avengers Infinity War was 2 hours and 29 minutes. And also for reference, Venom was an hour and 40 minutes.
Okay, Venom was notoriously short, and I love it for that.
But I do want to bring it up because it's the other side of the extreme here because we talked about Venom a few weeks ago, and that one was incredibly short. Meanwhile, this one we're going to have an incredibly long movie, one that's longer than your typical Marvel movie.
And I understand why. We're dealing with the main heroes of 10 characters.
Oh yeah,
There's
because
10 characters in Eternals that are heroes plus Dane Whitman's character, who's probably going to become the Black Knight. And we're getting Harry Styles, a Star Fox somewhere in there. And the Eternal, and I mean not the Eternal, and the Celestials, and we still got Crow and his deviants going on.
right.
So, yeah, there's a lot going into this movie.
Yeah.
How do you think Star Fox is going to
I
factor into this?
I have no clue in all honesty because originally when you told me that a few weeks ago, I nearly like my brain nearly imploded. So I'm still trying to process that. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I I mean, I don't know if I could see him in the main plot. He may be a post-credit scene, or maybe he cameos in a flashback. Because in the comics, he's an Eternal, like the rest of them. Because Thanos is also an Eternal. He's just an Eternal with a deviant look. So maybe his character appears in a flashback, and we'll see him in a post-credit scene. I don't know, but I wonder how Harry Styles, and also, how do you think Dane Whitman's character is going to fit?
Because you said he was gonna be the main villain,
No,
right?
Dane
Nope.
Whitman, he's Cersei's boyfriend, and in the comics, Dane Whitman is the Black Knight.
Okay, okay.
It doesn't look like he's the Black Knight in this movie, though.
Which this whole universe has plenty of room to build up for future movies, so there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of space for um, just build up for payoff later in like maybe a few
Yeah,
years.
but if he's not the Black Knight in this movie, I wonder what his role will be. Because if he won't have superpowers, I wonder if he's supposed to be the everyman whose like perspective we're going to be looking through.
Well, then again, this movie or the MCU has many times in the past created memorable and likable side characters with very few exceptions.
Yeah, I think he will be one of them. I mean, he did ask the hard hitting questions. Where were you during Thanos?
Yeah, because honestly, are there really any bad side characters with the exceptions of maybe like Darcy in Thor 2 or um, the the other ex-convicts from Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Hey, hey, hey.
We're not going to talk about the character I know you're thinking of. He was good.
Okay.
I know who you're thinking of, and he was good, but the other two, terrible.
But the other one was good in What If.
He had one payoff in What If, and that's it.
Baba Yaga.
That I know they built that joke for the entirety of that episode, and because of the fact that he said it multiple times in Ant-Man and the Wasp. It was a good payoff. I don't think it was worth including him in the episode.
Fine. Okay. Anyways, I think you're right in the sense that, well, disregarding the Ant-Man characters, because I think they were great side characters, there haven't been really any bad side characters in the MCU. So I
Yeah.
don't really think we're going to see that here.
Yeah.
I am very interested in seeing what they have been doing in between when they first arrived and now. Like, we know Druig is going to be running a cult, and we theorize that Phastos helped J. Robert Oppenheimer create the nuclear bomb back in World
I
War
don't
II.
even think they really have to go that deep into it. I think they can just introduce the characters with whatever they're doing now as like an idea as to what they did in that time, with maybe a few exceptions of maybe some flashbacks.
Yeah, no, that's why I say about Phastos, because we do see the explosion of Hiroshima. So that's why some people are thinking that Phastos, since he's the inventor, helped J. Robert Oppenheimer create the nuke. And we also know Kingo was a Bollywood superstar because he has the cameraman walking everywhere, which that poor cameraman is probably going to die or something because there's no way this man is surviving all the shenanigans that are going to happen in this movie.
That was the one clip I did see recently, and I didn't enjoy that. So that's why I'm even more skeptical about the review bombing, because some of the clips coming out were pretty good.
Yeah. And also,
I mean, yeah, it's marketing. Yeah, they're going to release good clips, but
also, to all those YouTube theorists that are really overthinking that Superman line from one of the trailers, people, DC is a comic book in like TV medium in Marvel, and Marvel is a comic book and media medium in DC. That is it. There's no multiverse shenanigans involving Superman. That's just not going to happen. We're not building up to Avengers X Justice League. No. Hold your horses, people.
And also, the one time they did do that. They created several monstrosities.
What? You're telling me you didn't like Superman holding Mjolnir and Captain America's shield?
No, I didn't like Batman and Wolverine meshed into one giant monstrosity of a character.
I tend to pretend that doesn't exist. I pretend to look at Storm and Wonder Woman because that was awesome. Or the Superman with Mjolnir's hammer and Captain America's shield. I think that's the ultimate. In my opinion, I think that's the perfect encapsulation of who Superman is.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, we're not getting some Avengers cross Justice League type shit from that one Superman reference. I think it's just a reference to the fact that Icarus shoots laser eyes.
That's it.
And he flies.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think he's probably going to be the villain. Now, I've heard that there's no plans internally for an Eternals sequel, which I'm fine with considering there's 10 of them. I'm pretty sure they're just going to start appearing throughout the rest of the MCU individually.
I mean, look at what they did with Doctor Strange before he gets his own sequel. I mean, he's gotten probably 4 or 5 other appearances before his next movie, and he's already better than his character was in the original movie.
Yeah, he shows up before his sequel. He shows up in
both in the most recent Avengers movies,
Infinity War, Endgame. He shows up in What If. He's showing up in No Way Home. He was supposed to show up in WandaVision.
He showed up in Ragnarok.
Oh yeah, he did show up in Ragnarok as well. I mean, that's 5, nearly 6, because he was supposed to be in WandaVision. He was supposed to be the guy that was showing those commercials that we were seeing with the Hydra soap and the kid that dies on the desert island. But yeah, so I imagine we'll probably see characters we'll probably see Phastos again, and we'll probably see Athena, because I cannot imagine them wasting Angelina Jolie's character. And Cersei, obviously, she's the main character.
I can't imagine how expensive she is.
I mean, is she going to be that much more expensive than some of the actors they already have on their payroll?
Good point.
Like,
Robert Downey Jr. is probably still more expensive.
I was about to say, they have Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Hiddleston, and they were not lesser known actors when they signed on.
Yeah.
And,
Especially Benedict Cumberbatch.
I mean, they got Matt Damon to play an extra, for God's sake.
They gave him like 2 minutes of screen time.
He is coming back for Thor 4.
Yeah, that will be funny.
Oh my god! I mean, they got Sylvester Stallone for Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They got money to throw around.
Yeah. Oh man.
Overall, I'm really excited for this movie. The review bombs, I don't care about review bombs. I've never cared because I know there's always an agenda behind review bombs, and usually that agenda is not good.
Yeah, because this review bombing is probably just as strong as I wouldn't say just as strong, maybe just as crazy. This review bombing that is happening is just as crazy as the one that we got for Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I don't think anyone's fazed by this. I think people want to go see this movie and make their own opinions. So they aren't having any, they aren't influencing anybody's opinion going in.
Yeah.
Which is good. I'm glad to see that the general audience has evolved past this kind of clumsily built wall that's trying to stop us from enjoying what we want to watch.
After the fandom menace kind of imploded after episode 9, I think the general populace has gotten through this.
I kind of stopped paying attention to them. I have no idea what they were up to during episode 9, not gonna lie.
They died.
I can imagine, because, I mean, there really was nothing to freak out from their perspective about episode 9.
They were like, yeah, this movie is better than Ryan Johnson's movie, and then they were like, wait, no, this movie is absolute dog shit.
Which, I mean,
it was.
A lot of people have started to come around about The Last Jedi, myself included.
Yeah. I still hold true that was the best movie in the trilogy.
I'm willing to fight you on that, but not today.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it wasn't a great movie, but it's not as bad as people were saying it is, because that movie was still shot beautifully.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of those shots in that movie could be computer screensavers.
Yeah. That definitely could be. But anyways, moving on from Eternals, let's talk about Morbius.
So we recently got our second trailer for Morbius, and it had expanded a lot on the stuff that we already knew, like how he's getting his powers, and how he's developing as a character from that point onward. But one thing that is really confusing a lot of people is the implications as to which universe this is going to take place in.
Yeah, so here are all the known discrepancies that we've seen. So we get a reference to Rhino.
We get multiple references to Venom.
Yeah, so we get references to Rhino. There are references to Venom. We get a reference to a Black Cat. So the Rhino reference and the Black Cat reference could be the same ones from The Amazing Spider-Man. Venom is obviously a reference to the Venom movies. The Daily Bugle logo is the same one that we saw in, I believe, the Sam Raimi trilogy, as well as in Venom Let There Be Carnage.
And we also get more of a highlight of Michael Keaton's character in the movies. So this is a very confusing as to which universe this will take place in. But
we also see Spider-Man in the background in the Amazing Spider-Man outfit, but with Murderer graffitied over him, implying that that's the Mysterio. That this is the same Spider-Man that is accused of killing Mysterio.
Which we saw that in the first trailer too. But overall, it's really confusing where this movie will take place, but I think I'm going to put my foot down and say that it will still take place in the MCU.
Yeah, I think it will, because
which leans more towards the idea that Venom will take a significant role, or not a significant role, but he will make an appearance in No Way Home.
Yeah. So here's my opinion on this whole thing. I agree that he's in the MCU. I think this is all manufactured to cause discourse and confusion in some marketing ploy. Because, and here's my reasoning why. So we actually did get a leak early on, back when this movie was supposed to come out this year, about what Morbius would be all about. And one thing that leak stated is that this movie was always meant to take place in the MCU, and that the Spider-Man and the Michael Keaton and the Daily Bugle and all that stuff are like that in are the way that they are in the trailer to mislead, but in the movie itself, it is actually all MCU. And it's interesting that they say that because this movie was finished before the end credits scene for Venom Let There Be Carnage was ever thought of. Because the Let There Be Carnage scene was done really late into production, done this year.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Morbius, that entire leak came out back in 2020.
Yeah,
And
the fact that this movie's been delayed multiple times, it's really confusing where all of this is going. Because,
yeah.
like,
The interesting thing, though, about the leak, sorry to cut you off, is that the leak says that, and I imagine this leak is no longer accurate just because a year has gone by in delay. They've probably reshot a whole bunch of things. There's probably things that they've changed around, so take it with a grain of salt. But one thing the leak says is that we know that Morbius is going to go to prison. We see him wearing the prison jumpsuit and everything. Apparently, he leads a prison breakout, and in the breakout, we see Adrian Toomes, Vulture, Matt Gargan, Scorpion, and Cletus Cassidy, Carnage, all escape from prison together. And that is why Vulture tells Morbius, I'm making a team. Apparently, Carnage was already going to be seeded to be in the MCU before Venom Let There Be Carnage.
I guess that would be interesting. But
So,
of course, the multiple delays probably impacted that quite a bit.
Yeah. There's also the fact that Morbius, apparently when he comes to New York, because according to this leak, which it probably has been changed already, but after Morbius gets on that tanker thing and kills everyone on board, he lands in New York and he goes into a bar and he sees J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, talking about Spider-Man killing Mysterio, effectively confirming that this is supposed to take place in the MCU. But I do think it is, but I do wonder if these Venom references are actually just put in for the trailer to make it so that the people that are fans of Venom don't lose interest, you know?
Right.
Because that whole, who are you? I am Venom. Just kidding, I'm Dr. Michael Morbius. I think that's a trailer-only line.
You think so?
I think that is a trailer-only scene.
Yeah, which I guess that would make sense because there really isn't much room for Venom to be included when we're already having 6 other antagonists in the movie.
In Morbius?
In No Way Home.
Yeah. I don't think any Venom references in Morbius is supposed to tie into No Way Home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a trailer-only line because in the context of the Venom movies, Venom isn't a public figure.
Right, because there's no way for him, because
Carlton Drake died, and that entire fight was remote, and the only general population people that know that Eddie Brock is Venom was Anne, Dan, Mrs. Chen, Shriek, Carnage, and Riot. Shriek, Carnage, and Riot are dead, so it's just Anne, Dan, and Mrs. Chen. There's no way Michael Morbius, who's in New York City, knows about Venom, which is why I'm convinced that it's a trailer-only line.
Yeah. So, this movie feels so far away because it's in 2022, and do we even have an exact release date?
January is from what I've heard.
Really?
I've heard January. I personally think this movie looks way better than both Venom movies.
Well, there's definitely a lot to go up from the Venom movies, for sure.
Yeah, even though I really liked Let There Be Carnage, I think this will be better than it. For one, I really like how they're portraying his powers, such as his super speed. Gives off a lot of Nightcrawler vibes, from X-Men, or how Quicksilver kind of moves with the streaks around him.
No, of all of them, my favorite was how they interpreted the echolocation.
Oh yeah, where you can see like the sound waves bouncing off all the buildings.
Yeah,
That was also really cool. I mean, I think he's gonna be really cool.
yeah.
Who do you think is the villain of the movie?
Hmm. Maybe it's more of a Joker-like story where it's him growing as a character.
I don't know. I think the villain is it's so let me see. There's this
Because that would still be interesting. Like him evolving into a vampire would be pretty fun, not gonna lie.
yes, there's this British actor that's in the movie who we see very briefly, but he was walking menacingly. Matt Smith, yes. So Matt Smith, he plays the Doctor in Doctor Who. I think his character is the villain. Just because he's giving me villain vibes. That menacing little walk that he does in the New York subway station in the trailer, villain vibes.
Hmm.
I think he's the villain.
Okay.
Do you think Morbius will be in Blade? Because in the comics, Morbius is the vampire that gives Blade his powers.
That would be pretty interesting, actually.
I think they're setting Morbius up in the MCU, not just for Spider-Man, but for Blade. I think that's what he's actually being set up for.
Which I would be a big fan of because there are a lot of people who love the original Blade movies.
Which I really hope that they get incorporated into. In my opinion, every Marvel live action movie, even the shitty ones, should be allowed to join the Marvel multiverse. As in, this exists in the Marvel multiverse. It won't actually tie into any main stories, but it's part of the multiverse. So if you want to include it in your Marvel watch list, you can, but you don't have to.
Except for the one. What's the character?
Howard the Duck.
How did you know? How did you know? How did you know that was the one that I was going to exclude from this entire watch list?
Because Howard the Duck is a terrible movie.
Thanks, George Lucas.
Oh,
Yeah, he did make that movie.
Let's not remember that. No, it's like the Christmas special for Star Wars.
The what?
The one where everyone is trying to destroy every single VHS of it that ever exists.
Oh, right, that. Yes, I do remember that
But shit,
one.
God.
I did enjoy the use of the sledgehammer.
Overall, I think Morbius is going to be part of the MCU, and I think he's going to tie more into Blade than he will Spider-Man. Obviously, he will cross over with Spider-Man. I think that's a given.
Probably.
Like he's a Spider-Man villain. That's a money-making story right there. And what Morbius like so character Matt Smith plays is called Lucius Crown. I do not know how to pronounce his name. His name is Lucius Crown. And if that is true, Lucius Crown is a multiversal character in the sense that he goes across the multiverse killing spider people for sustenance. And so with his character appearing, it does signal another aspect of the multiverse. What if it's not Doctor Strange, but Lucius's Crown's interference with things that also helps set off the multiverse? Because at this point, there's like 5 different reasons that happen all at the same time for why the multiverse broke apart. We have Wanda with the Darkhold. We have Sylvie killing He Who Remains. We have Ultron and Uatu the Watcher. We have Shang-Chi killing the Dweller in Darkness. Now we get Lucius Crown and Morbius. And we got Doctor Strange and Peter. At this point, I'm convinced the multiverse was always going to break apart thanks to Sylvie, and all these other things are just bridges.
Would the event in Shang-Chi really be like a multiversal significant event?
The Dweller in Darkness was said to come from a different universe.
Fair.
And the fact that
was it a different universe or different dimension?
They said universe. They specifically used the word universe, which makes sense because in the comics, the Dweller in Darkness and all that is from a different universe.
Okay.
And also, a lot of people have drawn similarities to Wanda hearing her kid's voice through the Darkhold to how Wang Wu is hearing his wife's voice through the Dweller in Darkness.
Okay.
So at this point, we got multiverse everywhere. Every Marvel movie not named Black Widow pretty much is dealing with the multiverse. I wouldn't be surprised if Eternals does it too.
Yeah.
Like, the only Marvel properties that have come out this year that isn't dealing with the multiverse is Hawkeye and Falcon. Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And that's solely because none of them involve anything cosmic.
Right.
But
Which I know, like, to most people, they're the least interesting, but they still are very good quality and should not be slept on.
yes, I mean, we haven't seen Hawkeye, but I think Hawkeye's probably going to be the best show that comes out.
Think so?
I mean, if Vincent D'Onofrio shows up in Hawkeye, it's over.
Yeah.
People will.
People will lose their mind.
This will be lauded as the best MCU show ever if Vincent D'Onofrio shows up.
Now that would be a sight to be behold. That would be a sight to behold for sure.
Yes. And if Vincent D'Onofrio shows up in Hawkeye, then I'm all but convinced that Charlie Cox is coming back as Matt Murdock in No Way Home.
Yeah. Well, I think that was pretty much, like, the rumor is pretty much so spread out that it's probably happening.
I mean, the rumor of him being in No Way Home is about as big as Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield being in No Way Home.
Yeah, because most people are saying, oh yeah, he's showing up as Matthew Murdock, but not as Daredevil.
Which I'm convinced that's probably what would happen.
Because, I mean, yeah, probably Tom Holland's Spider-Man needs a lawyer. That's fair enough.
Yeah, and I cannot see any way a Matt Murdock could keep up.
Yeah.
Like, MCU Matt Murdock cannot keep up with any of the villains that are about to show up.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
But back to Morbius. I really like this. I really like the aesthetic of the movie in the sense that it's dark, which kind of works because vampires live in darkness. They don't necessarily come out in the light.
It shares an aesthetic similarity to the other two Venom movies.
Yeah, but I think in this one, it's much more appropriate.
Yeah.
Because with Morbius being a vampire and this being a vampire movie and all, I feel that aesthetic fits more than with Venom. Because I felt a lot of Venom's aesthetic worked against it because sometimes it made it hard to see the symbiotes.
Only in the first movie, honestly.
There were some parts in the second movie I felt were a little difficult to see. Not as bad, though, as the first one. Good God.
It wasn't as noticeable.
Yeah. But I think Morbius, will take advantage of this the best.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see it. I am excited to see where his character will go. I know his character will be in the MCU. Like, I am confident that Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige came to a deal that these characters are going to be MCU canon, and that you can refer. And I think that this is how the deal works. They will appear in Spider-Man MCU movies. The events of their movies will be lightly referenced in other MCU properties, and that is it.
Yeah.
I don't, with the exception of Morbius showing up in Blade, I am convinced he will.
Okay. Well, I would like to move on because there is also another trailer that we do need to discuss.
Yes.
And that would be the Book of Boba Fett trailer that just came out this week.
Yes. So, I kind of forgot when the Book of Boba Fett was coming out. So, this trailer hit me by surprise.
Honestly, same here, because I was not expecting it.
Yeah. I really like the direction they're going with Boba Fett taking over for Jabba, like they implied he was at the end of Mandalorian Season 2.
Yeah. I felt that it was really appropriate for his character to go in that direction, because, I mean, that was who hired him originally.
Yeah.
In episode 6, so
4.
Or I'm sorry, he mostly takes a main role in episode 4 and 6. I'm sorry.
No, he's in episode 5. He's one of the villains of episode 5.
It's been so long since I saw the original trailer.
Background character in episode 4, villain in episode 5, minor villain episode 6.
He dies in episode 6.
Well, he's not dead.
Oh god, I don't want to talk about how many times in canon that he's died in the Sarlacc pit, in quotations.
I mean, both in canon and Legends, let's be honest here, he was never meant to die.
Because hasn't he died to the Sarlacc pit like 3 times, in including all of the things that are out of canon?
So I believe in canon he fell once. I believe in the expanded universe, he falls twice, but he survives both times.
Uh,
I believe the first time he gets saved by Dengar, who, if you remember him, he's that bounty hunter in The Empire Strikes Back with all the bandages around his face.
yeah.
That's Dengar. Apparently, Dengar saves him in the first time in the EU, and I believe the second time he just escapes.
Like, doesn't he like shoot a rocket into, or like his jetpack rocket into the mouth of the Sarlacc and it just spits him out or something like that?
No, I don't believe it was that. I believe he was actually saved by. So I know when Dengar goes in, it's because Dengar goes into the Sarlacc to save him. Because the Sarlacc is, like, dying after getting shot. And so I don't think he ever, like, blasts it because that would probably kill him. I think it was more that he uses his jetpack to get momentum to shoot out of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. But overall, yeah, he's alive. And he's taken over Jabba.
Yeah, which could be fun, especially with Ming-Na Wen's character coming back as well.
Yes.
Because,
Why am I forgetting her name? Fennec Shan. Fennec
yeah,
Shan.
because I absolutely loved her character in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, yeah. I mean, fuck Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Mulan. I love her in Mulan.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
She is amazing. I mean, yes, she's great in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but she is a Disney princess.
That is true.
Love Mulan. So her character, Fennec Shan, was also really good in The Bad Batch as well. You should watch The Bad Batch.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'm very interested in, which unfortunately, since you haven't watched the Clone Wars, you may not get, but I wonder how Boba Fett in creating his criminal underworld is going to merge with the Crimson Dawn.
That
So,
is fair, because, I mean, outside of the Clone Wars, the only link to the Crimson Dawn we get is in Solo.
yeah. So, well, yes. So here's the thing. I don't think Darth Maul's showing up in Book of Boba Fett. He has been definitively killed in Star Wars Rebels. He's dead. He's not coming back. They definitively kills him off in Rebels. He's dead. But we never saw what happened to Dryden Voss and Kira.
Pretty sure, well, yeah, Kira is still out there for sure. Probably, maybe took it up after Rebels.
Yeah. Well, in between.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, this is before Rebels, so, right?
Yeah, Solo is before Rebels. So, in my opinion, what has to happen is that Kira ousts Maul from the Crimson Dawn, which leads to Maul becoming the hobo on Dathomir that ends up training Ezra. Spoilers. Because he has none of his... Come Rebels, Maul has none of the resources from Crimson Dawn. So, in my opinion, I think the character to look out for is Kira in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I think she'll be leading Crimson Dawn, and it should be interesting in seeing how that works. Because the whole history of Crimson Dawn is that it used to be the Shadow Collective, which was a combination of the Black Sun, the Pike Syndicate, Crimson Dawn, originally Death Watch of Mandalore, and then Death Watch has their civil war. Dryden Voss joins. Maul takes back over the Mandalorians. Then Civil War happens. Maul gets arrested. Mandalorian Civil War continues. Stormtroopers quell Civil War. Maul's Mandalorians get control over Mandalore by pledging fealty to the Empire. The Pikes and the Black Sun just go underground. And Dryden Voss seems to be the only one that ends up maintaining contact with Maul. So I wonder how it's all going to wrap around when it comes to the Book of Boba Fett. Because by that point, Maul has been dead for at least a decade, and the Empire's collapsed, and Jabba's entire cartel has collapsed. So if Kira's the current head honcho of the underworld, her and Boba Fett going at it seems to be prime material.
Yeah. Which you're familiar with more of the Clone Wars than I am, so you could probably go into more in depth than I ever could. But I'm still looking forward to this show because
Yeah.
I mean, I just recently watched season 2 of The Mandalorian, and it was all fantastic.
Yeah. So, well, once again, this is a Clone Wars reference. I wonder if Cad Bane will show up. Because Originally in season 7 or 8 of the Clone Wars, when it was supposed to happen, the dent on Boba Fett's helmet that we see was given to him by Cad Bane in a duel that he has with Boba. And it was implied that Boba kills him. That is no longer canon because Cad Bane shows up in Star Wars The Bad Batch, which is the sequel to Star Wars The Clone Wars, and he lives to the end. And in Star Wars The Bad Batch, it's established that him and Fennec Shand are starting to have a rivalry, as he's the grizzled veteran of the bounty hunter world while she was the upstart rookie. And the two of them clash in The Bad Batch, and now that she is working under Boba, and Boba was trained by Cad Bane, I do wonder if he'll show up to see the student that he trained and the student that his student has now trained in Fennec Shand,
Hmm. Okay.
which
That's
should
a,
be really interesting.
that's a lot for me to take in all at once, considering that's an aspect of the Star Wars universe I have not consumed yet.
This is why I'm telling you, you need to watch Star Wars The Clone Wars, you need to watch The Bad Batch, and you need to watch Rebels. Because they are really going to influence this aspect of Star Wars lore.
I will watch the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, but I refuse to watch Rebels.
So you have to watch Rebels if you want to understand the rest. I'm sorry. Rebels is too important. Rebels is way too important for you to skip over it. I mean, even in The Mandalorian, there were plot lines from Rebels in The Mandalorian. The fact that Ahsoka's looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn is a direct plot point that is at the ending of Rebels that's being continued in the Ahsoka series. That is a spin-off of that Mandalorian episode.
Can I just read a plot synopsis?
No, you absolutely cannot. There's too many moving parts within Rebels for you to skip it. You gotta watch it.
That's gonna be a massive strain to watch. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Listen, it's like Star Wars The Clone Wars. Kiddie in the beginning, but towards the end, the story is more deep and more rewarding. I really feel like season 1 of Rebels did it a disservice because the rest of the series isn't that bad. It does end up living to the quality of Star Wars The Clone Wars.
Alright, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, some people, the original was very much kid-friendly because it was starting out on Disney and they didn't want to go too deep in it, despite the fact that they mention a genocide in episode 2. But, yeah, but then again, the original Star Wars The Clone Wars run was also pretty kid-friendly because it was on Cartoon Network. And it wasn't until season 1 finished and they were like, okay, Dave, go for it.
I don't even think it was that. I think it was more that they were afraid of cancellation, so they just went all out. That's what I've heard.
No, because Star Wars The Clone Wars was getting bankrolled by George Lucas himself.
Yeah.
And so, after the first season, Dave Filoni was given a whole lot more freedom after seeing its massive success, and so they shuffled it closer to Adult Swim time slot. It was like at the edge of when Cartoon Network ends and Adult Swim begins. That's when new Star Wars episodes would come out, and that's when it got a lot more serious and darker episodes. So, and the same kind of happened with Star Wars Rebels, where after the first season, they were allowed to go much darker and more serious. I don't think they were ever afraid of cancellation, because Star Wars The Clone Wars was canceled because of the Disney deal.
I feel like I've got to figure out where I read that from.
Yeah, I never felt that they were afraid of cancellation because they were able to tell the story they wanted to tell. Unlike Star Wars The Clone Wars where they didn't, but that's mainly because of the Disney Star Wars deal.
Right. Alright.
But overall, the Book of Boba Fett was really good. Like, the trailer was really good. I'm really excited to see where it's going. I'm really happy Tamara Morrison is returning as Boba Fett for as much as I love D. Bradley Baker playing the clones throughout the Clone Wars and Rebels. Tamara Morrison returning is just great. He was Jango and the clones in the prequels, and it's good to see him return for live action.
Yeah, for sure. Alright.
Yeah. So,
let's go ahead and move on to our next topic today.
Yeah.
So, for political segments today, we've got quite a bit to talk about. Which one do you want to start off with? Because we've got two big ones here.
Let's start with the January 6th stuff. because I think the election stuff is the biggest thing we should talk about.
That is fair. So recently, we've heard from reports of from some senators that were trapped during the January 6th Capitol riots, and some of the stuff that we've heard that they've said is beyond astonishing.
Yeah, so like Lindsey Graham, apparently he was telling the Capitol police officers to shoot and kill on sight. He's like, kill them on sight. What do we give you guns for? We give you guns to kill people. And which is very interesting, seeing as how this was the same man that backpedaled like he was fucking pedaling throughout the Red Sea or something, to go on and say, no, it was just a protest that got out of hand, people. Like, it's not that serious. Clearly it was serious, Lindsay, because you tried to advocate for them getting shot, which, to be fair, wouldn't be an unfair punishment. All things considered, the threat that they were posing to the senators and the congressmen,
or even to democracy in the U.S. as a whole.
Yeah, like it wouldn't have been unfair of a request, but the fact that afterwards he's trying to say like bend over backwards to be like, no, it wasn't that bad, really kind of shows just how much of a fake he is. I mean, we always knew that.
Yeah, I mean, and as soon as this was uncovered, like there was a Tucker Carlson segment where he lambasted him on air, like calling him a traitor to his base, which is honestly, it's pretty funny.
It's pretty funny, honestly. As much as I hate Tucker Carlson, also obligatory. Fuck you, Tucker Carlson. He's right.
Yeah,
he is right about Lindsey Graham in this regard.
I mean, Lindsey Graham is like the standard example of bootlicking politician.
Oh yeah, like he is. He simply is just a bootlicker who will do anything and everything to ensure that he makes money and gets reelected.
I even heard like in one of the most recent like tell-all Trump books that came out, like that Lindsey Graham would go over to his golf courses and just indulge in all of the like free food that they had out there for the senators or something like that.
Yeah, no. He definitely, like, here's the thing. Lindsey Graham is like that popular kid orbiter. You know, the one in high school? He orbits the popular kids because he wants to, like, reap the benefits of being associated with popular kids, but he actually doesn't put in all that much effort. And if someone in the popular kid circle that he was kind of friends with gets dropped, he'll just drop them immediately. Even if he personally has no beef with them. That's Lindsey Graham to a T.
Yeah.
He's a fucking vulture. And it's not surprising that he was calling for these people's death. It's not unreasonable either. But at the same time, it shows that he doesn't kill. He doesn't care for his base.
I mean, he should be scared. The rioters there were calling for the deaths of other Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too speculatory, but I can only imagine in the flurry of mob justice and mob rage that they probably would kill a bunch of senators that they normally would have spared just out of pure fury.
I mean, honestly, yeah.
And bringing it back to really the comments about using the guns, it is a good thing that they didn't. It's been noted since that many of the January 6th insurrectionists were well armed and or knew how to use guns. Meaning that if a gun was drawn against the rioters, the Ashley Babbitt situation notwithstanding, the cops would be overrun, their guns would be taken and used against them.
There was already fear of their guns being taken already, and I'm pretty sure some were.
Yeah, like
I mean, that's mostly speculation on my part. But I'm pretty sure like some weapons were taken.
Oh yeah.
Like maybe just some melee weapons, like a baton or something.
Oh yeah, no, melee weapons were definitely taken. But I imagine if guns were taken, it would be a bloodbath. Because this moment a sizable group of Trump supporters would have had guns, you're talking about a shootout in the Capitol. That would tear the city apart.
which also just leads more into the fact of how moronic Lindsey Graham is.
Yeah, he is a moron. I don't think he's a moron for saying that because fear. I
Fair,
imagine he was.
but this
I
was a
imagine he
this
was pissing himself in fear.
this is a result of the seeds that he's reaped,
Yeah, the
or sown.
sound.
So
Yeah,
he
he.
reaps what he sown.
Yes, this is definitely a result of him being a bootlicker that didn't stand up to Trump and would much rather gorge his fat face instead of actually being, a politician that was elected by the people to serve the people.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
one of the most memorable lines that I've heard while he was on like cable news is like, "Listen, we've got to make sure that we protect all of the school children over in Missouri from the invaders from Mexico."
Yeah, I remember that, and it was like, so you do know Missouri doesn't border Mexico, right?
But it's important for for a reason, right? Right?
They're white.
That's it. That's what we're thinking about.
Yeah,
I knew there was a Okay, I need to stop this joke. I need to stop this joke. I'm going way too far, and I really need to stop. I
okay, okay, but back to Lindsey Graham. So this is news. I think the reason why this is big news is twofold. One, it shows a general trend amongst the Republicans in their most private moments. They fear their base.
I mean, I'm sure you've heard the saying, Democrats hate their base, but Republicans are scared to death of their base.
Yes, and I
That
think
is a that is a so common of a phrase because it's so obvious. Because obviously Democrats hate or Democrat politicians hate the fact that their base are fighting for social justice or fighting for equal rights, things like that. And meanwhile, what are the Republican politicians advocating for on behalf of their base?
yeah, they're like the Republicans, like Lindsey Graham. This shows that Lindsey Graham is afraid of his base, and in some ways, I feel for the man. The conservative demographic is terrifying. But I can't feel too bad for him because they're like this because of him.
Oh yeah, this is all because of every action that he's taken as a politician to advocate for his base.
Yeah, I mean, all the white supremacist dog whistling, all the I'm a working man, all type of southern type stuff, despite being a rich boy and despite actually not caring about the poor people. Like, all of this is now culminated into this very, very borderline, teetering on the line of fascism, crazed rabbit base. And I mean, he nearly died at the hands of these people.
Yeah, I think
And you would
that's reasonable to assume.
and you would think that after coming to grips with his own mortality at the hands of the political movement that he is a part of, you would think he would reconsider his positions, realize that things have gone too far, and, in my opinion, should just resign.
The money's too good, man.
But Lindsey Graham is not a normal, decent human being. He's a piece of shit. He's a power hungry shit stain. And because of that fact, what does he do? He minimizes the fact that nearly all of his colleagues and himself were killed by these people. He kowtows to their every whim, and now he's just a little bitch boy.
Was he ever not?
I mean, yes, he was always a bitch boy, but like, there's a level of bitchery. This is like a new low. Like, imagine being so cucked that your life nearly died, that your life is nearly ended by these people, and you still submit. No backbone, no dignity, no principles. He's nothing but a slime. Spineless, cowardly, and weak. That's everything that Lindsey Graham is. He's a weak man, an even weaker politician, and he is a disgrace to America, Americans, and democracy as a whole.
I mean, I even remember Like, he is so unlikable that even Republicans tried to sabotage him during the senatorial race in 2020. I believe there was like a small faction of Republicans that were trying to dethrone him in favor of the Democratic candidate.
Small,
Not
but they
in
had bigger fish to fry because Ted Cruz was also there, and they really don't like Ted Cruz. Say what you will about Lindsey Graham, they do not like Ted Cruz.
Was he in 2020? I don't believe he was.
I believe he was because he's running against Beto O'Rourke.
I think that was 2018.
2018?
I don't think he was in 2020.
I think I want to believe that he did run in 2020. It's just that, I mean, it's Texas, so we know Ted Cruz is going to win.
I mean, yeah.
But, yeah, no, Lindsey Graham, what more can be said about him that we already haven't said or that others haven't said? He's a spineless man.
Yeah, no, it was 2018.
It was?
2018 margin 50.9% to 48.3%.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah.
That means Ted Cruz will be up in 2024 then, right?
Ugh, please let him lose.
Let's hope. But anyways, back to Lindsey Graham. So the other aspect of this whole January 6th thing is one, how he's weak and he's afraid of the base. But two, it really goes to show just how dangerous that insurrection was and why downplaying it currently is terrible and does not bode well for the future.
Downplaying this now will lead to another one, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Especially if Trump runs and loses in 2024.
Yeah, I mean...
Or even if we get a midterm upset and we actually make it out with Democrats still holding all three, or I guess the
two.
The executive branch isn't really up for grabs in 2022.
Yeah.
But
if they hold the
the House and the Senate in 2022, which honestly I'm still convinced is going to be a massive upset, there will be riots.
I don't think 2022. Reason being, Americans don't care about midterms. Only really political minded Americans care about the midterms. Your general American doesn't, thus your general conservative does not care. 2024 though, when Trump's running, that's what you should look out for.
I kind of think that politicians are really desperate, so they're going to try to motivate their base to try to go all out in 2022, because there is a solid chance they can take back the Senate.
That doesn't matter. You got to remember, you got to think based off of emotion, not off logic with this.
That's what I'm missing. Because
when you think off of emotion, you need to realize that 2024 presidential election is a much more grandiose affair, which means stoking the ego of Donald Trump, which means he's going to be more bombastic. He's going to be in your face, yelling at the top of his lungs, rallying across the country.
See, that's the fallacy in my logic. I was actually using my brain.
You got to turn off your brain. Big event, big lights, big number, big violence.
I'm losing IQ points already. Let's move on.
Back to what I was saying. The fact that they're downplaying this, the fact that they're downplaying the insurrection, in my opinion, is terrible. But this revelation really does go to show that it was a terrible event. It was not something that we can just come off and say, oh, that happened. It was just a riot that got a little out of hand. No, this was a very clear and direct assault on our democracy, on our leaders, and for everything this country stood for.
And nothing is being done.
I mean, we're barely getting things done. Some people are getting thrown in prison. Some people are getting, charges. But even judges are questioning why these punishments the prosecution are levying are so low. I remember one judge even asked the prosecution, was like, are you sure this is all you want to charge him with? Given everything that has transpired throughout this trial, you have more than enough to charge him with more. And they're like, no, we just want to charge him with this. Which really shows that the downplaying of January 6th isn't just something done by Republicans, it's a Democrat problem as well. And before we tap into the Democrats' follies, I do want to bring up Paul Gosar's little news story that came out from January 6th as well.
Yeah.
So, Senator from Arizona Paul Gosar was recently um, outed as requesting a blank pardon for certain members of the January 6th insurrection that were conspiring to cause the insurrection. I believe he was in contact with two members of an Arizona, it was like an Arizona group of Republicans that were planning on charging the Capitol with the insurrection. Mind you, they were doing this through Facebook, once again tying into our segment from last week about how misinformation spreading on Facebook is a very dangerous thing. This was happening, and it reached the ears of Paul Gosar, and he promised these people that they would get a blank pardon for their actions.
Which leads us to the question: why do you need that blanket pardon?
Is it because the insurrection was, one, wrong, and two, illegal?
That couldn't be it.
Yeah, it couldn't have been it. It had to have been something else. No, we're
No,
joking.
no,
We're joking. We're joking. It is because it was illegal. It was exactly because it was illegal, and he knew that it was wrong, and he knew it was dangerous, yet he did it anyways. Why would he do that? Not only did Paul Gosar put the lives of his peers on the line, he put his own. Paul Gosar was in attendance at January 6th. Was he hoping that because he was in with some of the conspirators that they would leave him alone? Perhaps. I'm not saying that that's the case. This is all entirely conjecture and speculation. But maybe that was something going through his mind and why he requested that in case it failed. But what this tells me is something that we've been milling around for a while, but that there were people within the government that knew of January 6th ahead of time and did nothing to stop it by either actively encouraging it, by giving out incentives to people to do it, or by hamstringing the responses that the appropriate channels had to stop this insurrection. Like, this is just another example of there being people within this conservative sphere that were part of this insurrection plan and are not being punished. And I'm talking about Paul Gosar, I'm talking about Alex Jones, I'm talking about Charlie Kirk, I'm talking about Nick Fuentes, not Paul Joseph Watson. He's an asshole, but I don't think he was a part of this. But mainly those four people. But they are parts of me. Charlie Kirk and Alex Jones in part helped fund people going into January 6th. Paul Gosar was issuing these blank pardons, and I mean Nick Fuentes was basically cheerleading on the sidelines.
I mean, yeah, that's practically all he's good for.
I mean, you say that, but Nick Fuentes has a lot of political sway, more than we'd like to admit. I mean, he got Paul Gosar to come to his event, his neo-Nazi rally. And while Paul Gosar and his press department...
Was that before or after he got deplatformed? Because was it after?
It was around the time he was... I believe he had been deplatformed, but it was fairly recent that he was deplatformed.
Yeah, because back when that rally first happened, like, the media was hounding him within reason for, hey, why are you aligning with this problematic character?
And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I wasn't even invited to this event. They are clearly lying.
And he shows up.
Yeah, because, Paul Gosar is a liar and a piece of shit. And so, yeah, but back to the main point of this. The fact that he was promising blank pardons to certain people is scary because it shows that the plot to undermine democracy in this country comes from inside. And that if the going gets tough, there are people within our government that would sooner give up on democracy if it meant to save their own skin and potentially grab more power.
Yeah.
And it's really disturbing to see, because it's one thing when we theorize these things based off of things that they've said, that they haven't outright stated, but it's another to get confirmation that they were actively working behind the scenes to undermine democracy, even if it meant the death of their peers, both Democrat and Republican, or the death of their own constituents, risking their lives on an insurrection based off of a lie. A lie that he has continued to perpetrate by allowing this stupid auction to happen in what was it? Not auction, audit in the Arizona for the presidential election, which even turned out to reveal that Biden had gotten more votes than what they initially thought.
And they wasted so much taxpayer money. I'm pretty sure that the cost of those audits landed in the millions,
Yeah.
which is absurd.
And Paul Gosar, as the senator from Arizona, sat back and let it happen. Because at the end of the day, just like Lindsey Graham, he is afraid of his base. He's afraid of pissing them off. And he believes that if he placates to them and he makes sure that they are fine, that he'll be safe, he'll make his money, he'll be given whatever he wants and whatever the new world order would look like for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, January 6th was already terrible. In my opinion, it will go down as an event akin to 9/11.
Honestly, I'm afraid that it's not going to be.
So here's my reasoning is that it will, because
Well, when I say that, I mean it's going to take a very long time for it to settle in how much this event damaged democracy.
yeah, the reason why. So yeah, I don't think it will go down exactly like 9/11 because 9/11 was used as a springboard for the subsequent 20-year-long war that we had within the Middle East.
Yeah.
This, however, I believe will be a springboard for a different type of war, which is the current ongoing culture war and political war against fascism that we see in America. And I think that as time goes on, we will keep looking back at January 6th and we will see it as the true tipping point.
Because at this point, Republicans are so radicalized to the point where they are ready for violence. And we saw that in January 6th.
I mean, there have been polls that have come out. I remember I saw one on CNN that said 40% of conservative voters that responded to the poll, obviously not representative of all conservatives, but 40% of conservatives that responded to that poll believe that violence was a necessary thing that was needed to help American politics, which is terrifying because political violence does not end well. Every time we've seen political violence, innocent people die. Whether it's for a good cause or a bad cause, political violence leads to death. Death of innocence. While yes, some of the enemies do die, innocence will always be the one that suffer the most. Because political violence always takes the form of something akin to war. And as we know, war is hell. This is hell. And if it continues, America will become hell, in the sense that there will be no safety in our government. There will be no safety in the apparatuses that we believe protect us, because all it takes is a mob of MAGA hats and suddenly everything's changed.
Yeah.
If a mob of MAGA hats swarm your local state capital, what do? How safe do you feel? Do you feel that your rights could be protected if all it takes is a bunch of, trust fund white people running up with guns blazing?
And the scarier part is the fact that they can attract even more people in the Republican base to join them as well, to join the more radicalized part, and then radicalize themselves.
Yeah, and
because conservatism is pretty much a self-radicalizing ideology.
Yeah, it's actually akin to a death cult, in the sense that how a death cult works is that it's about radicalizing to a new layer over and over and over again. And within that radicalization to the new layer, you create others. It first becomes people outside of the cult. Then it becomes the people that are on the periphery of the cult. Then it's the ones that are in but not as deep. Then it just goes on over and over and over and over again until there's nothing left. And we're seeing that now. I mean, look at the Republican Party in the era of Nixon. Look at the Republican Party in the era of Herbert Walker Bush, and now look at the Republican Party of now. There is a through line directly from those Republican parties to now where what was considered regular for Republicans back during the Nixon era, we are now lauding as a centrist Republican that sees the light. When no, that's not true. They're already far right. But we are so right wing that where we are now, we would much rather run back to Washington, to Herbert Walker Bush.
Yeah, I mean,
to cling to that. I mean, the current Democratic Party is clinging to anything that resembles that.
I mean, they legit tried to rehabilitate George W. Bush.
I don't think that's anything to do with the Republicans per se. I think that's more of a fault of liberalism than a fault of conservatism.
I mean, no, Democrats are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Democrats tried to rehabilitate George
no.
Bush, which was terrible.
I mean, do modern day radicalized Republicans even like George Bush?
No, they don't talk about George Bush.
Like, because they don't really talk about him at all. Do they even like the direction he took the country?
No. Donald Trump and his rhetoric at the time was running completely antithetical to what the Republican Party at the time was spitting out, which at that point was kind of the lumbering corpse of what was Bush era Republicanism.
Yeah.
By the time Mitt Romney came around for the 2012 election, the Republican Party was kind of limping.
Because,
the specter of what George Bush did to ruin this country still weighed heavily on the populace.
Because wasn't Mitt Romney like, okay, we need a centrist Republican, someone who can appeal to the other side.
Appeal to white suburban moms that were liberal.
Yeah, like the whole idea was like, okay, let's try and pull in the people who are more towards social justice, but still lean towards conservatism.
I wouldn't say more towards social justice because
the people who don't lean toward it, but who are more amicable to it. Because
I don't think so. In the landscape of the 2012 election, it wasn't that it was people amicable to social justice. It was more towards people who were not affable. The word is apathetic to social justice.
Because I know more radicalized Republicans in that era were like, why are they bringing in this guy who doesn't represent anything we believe in? They're just trying to appeal to, SJWs were not a term back in the day, but
no. It was more towards people that were apathetic. That's what they were looking for. They were looking for white apathy. That's what they were trying to get with Mitt Romney. But appealing to white apathy doesn't work because what can you bring that will galvanize them? You can't. Not anything Mitt Romney said, at least. Yeah. Trump, however, played into an existential fear in American whiteness. American whiteness does not mean American white people, however. There is a very distinct difference between the sociological concept of whiteness and white people. So when I say American whiteness, I do not mean all white people because that would be absurd. All white people do not believe in the same thing because white people are not a monolith. As I was saying, Donald Trump tapped into the existential crisis of American whiteness, where in the sense where American whiteness has always dictated that white as a default. And with the world becoming more and more diverse and more connected, whiteness as a default has become more challenged as more cultures have joined America, have infiltrated America, not infiltrated is the wrong word, have combined with American culture through the advent of the internet becoming more and more popular through social media, as well as immigration, boosting up not just our culture, but our labor markets, meaning that their cultures will mix with ours. That is a fundamental fear of whiteness, is the fear of not being the default. Donald Trump tapped into that perfectly. Yeah. And now what we're seeing throughout now is with every culture war issue, the WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, are currently the ones becoming radicalized the most because everything that is everything that's been culminating in terms of the country becoming more diverse is now becoming mainstream. And so, where was I going with this? Back to Paul Gosar and Nick Fuentes and all of them, and how they profit off the January 6th insurrection. January 6th insurrection was born out of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant fear of whiteness no longer becoming the default. That is what it is. Because Joe Biden on his own is not what they fear. They fear what Joe Biden represents. Joe Biden on his own is not someone they particularly care about. It's more about what Joe Biden represents. He represents, now whether this is an accurate representation is very up for debate, but he represents what they see is everything wrong. They see diversity, they see culture mixing, they see equality, they see sexual liberation, they see gender liberation, they see anti-capitalism, they see all those different things in Joe Biden. Not that they're true, because Joe Biden does not embody those things.
I mean, for example, like, all of the Republicans freaked out during the 2020 election cycle, like calling him a socialist when he's the furthest thing from that.
Yeah.
Like, this was the big rallying cry. Like, we need to stop Joe Biden from implementing socialism into our country. Which, wow, is that a way? Is that not just, they are just speed running, trying to make liberals think that they're crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, it just harkens back to Red Scare mentality. But in my opinion, January 6th is the culmination of this great whiteness fear.
I mean, most of the people that are voting now did grow up during the Red Scare and the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. No, well, the Red Scare took place before the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
The Red Scare took place throughout the 60s and 70s thanks to Joe McCarthy. Yeah. Fall of the Soviet Union actually led to the full end of the Red Scare, because that meant that there was nothing left.
But that rhetoric was so powerful, because I actually read this in a book that I was reading a few months ago, and they talked about how, like, yeah, this Red Scare mentality and the fall of the Soviet Union still influences the way that the current baby boomers think.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. The Soviet Union fell in 1991. That was 40 years ago.
Which is crazy. No, 30 years ago.
30. 1991, 2001. 1991 to 2001 is 10. 1991 to 2011 is 20. 30, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, no, that was only 30 years ago.
Yeah, the Soviet Union only fell 30 years ago. Being 30 years old is young.
Yeah, like, that's still a millennium.
Yeah.
And most people younger than that are Gen Z.
Yeah. And so, because of that, because of this neo-Red Scare, I don't know. At this point, I'm rambling. At this point, I feel like we do need to move on, but I'm rambling. But the long and short of it, of what I want to say, is that Paul Gosar and Lindsey Graham are representative of the fear that Republican politicians have for their base, about how rabid and radical they've become, and how that fear has become basically a self-serving loop of them looking out for themselves and doing everything they can to ensure that they maintain power, lest they lose the power and be sacrificed to the mob.
Yeah, I mean, this segment was pretty much just evolved into us down talking conservatives, because let's just face it, the fact that they're still a relevant party it's so dangerous, and there's no path in sight to alleviate that.
Yeah. But switching gears from down-talking conservatives to down-talking Democrats, let's get into our final segment. The Democrats losing big during this election offseason.
Which, yes, there was an election this year, but
several elections,
but they were actually mostly local elections. So don't worry, you don't have to worry about the big Senate and House elections until 2022, but these were still really big.
Yeah, so the main thing is that they lost it. So Glenn Youngkin, a Republican in Virginia, upset Terry McAuliffe in Virginia, which was huge because Biden kind of comfortably won Virginia.
I think it was like a 10% lead.
Yeah, he had a 10% lead on Trump back in the 2020 election, which is huge. From what I'm hearing, Phil Murray barely beat out Jack. I believe his name is Jack Ciattarelli. I apologize if I mispronounced the name.
Which that was the Democrat, right?
Jack Ciattarelli was the Republican.
Or the Democrat won.
Yeah, Phil Murray was the Democrat, and he barely won the governorship in New Jersey against Jack Ciattarelli. Once again, I apologize if I butchered that name. We had what's it called? We had the socialists lose in India. I believe her name is India Jones.
India something.
India Jones or India something lose in Buffalo. She lost the mayoral candidateship to.
She lost to a write-in candidate.
Mind you, it was a write-in candidate, but it was a write-in candidate that had previously already ran.
And no, they both ran in the primaries,
Yeah.
And then he lost, came in for the general as a write-in, and still somehow came out with a win.
Yeah, and he's a Democrat, right?
Yeah, he's a Democrat.
Yeah, but she was a more progressive Democrat, and she lost
because she was an out and about socialist.
Yeah,
like she was very open about that.
Yeah, she's not about socialists, and she lost. We also had, while this wasn't necessarily a Democratic Party thing, this was still a huge loss for progressives. The Minneapolis population did not vote to fully defund the police and replace it with a general action committee of sorts.
Which I do want to talk extensively about that, but I more want to dive into the consequences of the Virginia election.
Yeah. And overall, Democrats are not seeing the big wins that they were expecting to coast along through this offseason into 2022. The Democratic strategy was that after winning in 2020, they were going to take over the House and the Senate, which they barely accomplished, and then they were going to coast. They were going to use the momentum of that win to mop up all these small elections in the offseason. Then going into 2022, on the heels of Biden having a successful first half of his presidency, they were going to sweep the House and the Senate. That plan immediately ran into the ground election night, when we saw that they did not win as much as they did in the House as they needed to. They lost seats, and how they barely lost the Senate, and only won it after the Georgia runoffs with Warnock and Ossoff.
I mean, we literally waited almost a month for that to take place, right?
Yeah, we waited 2 months, because that happened in January of 2021.
Oh my god, that was... Yeah, that did... Oh my god.
Yeah, January 4th. And that was only to tie the Senate, not even get a majority, a tie with Kamala Harris being the VP being able to be a tiebreaker. But that's not a definitive win. And so that was clearly showing that the plan didn't work. And yet here we are, nearing the end of 2021, and the Democrats think they can coast along, and they're getting smacked up left and right by Republicans.
There's an obvious flaw to that strategy, and that happened right as Biden announced his departure from, was it Afghanistan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did depart from Afghanistan.
And that was an absolute massive failure, because so many people on our side just were murdered, and it caused so many casualties and so many problems.
And so here,
because that was his big dip in his approval ratings, and the reason I say all of that is because they were expecting to use his approval in a successful first half of his term to guide these election wins, and that just did not happen at all.
So I actually have a different perspective. While yes, that was a dip in his approval ratings. One, the deal to move out of Afghanistan was already done by Trump with the Taliban.
I don't blame him for that. I'm saying, he did... I don't blame him for that. I blame him for not changing his approval ratings. That's what I'm harping on.
But to go on that track, I was going to say, I don't really think that's the main issue as to why this happened. I think the real issue is that the Democratic Party laid too into Biden, thinking that Biden was the reason voters were coming out. Wrong.
No, the reason voters came out is because they didn't want Trump in.
Biden was a bulwark against Trump. People voted for Biden because they wanted Trump not to win. It wasn't the fact that Biden is a charismatic leader that was leading the Democrats into a golden age. He was someone that was the next best thing besides fascism.
To fix what you were saying, they didn't vote for Biden. They voted against Trump. And this is such a common saying, but this has to be said because Democrats do not seem to understand this whatsoever.
They have completely deluded themselves into this idea that Trump was so bad that it affected the rest of the Republican Party. No, that is not what happened.
No, Republicans just fell in line.
Like, here's the thing.
They were completely behind everything that he stood for because it was beneficial to them.
Here's the thing that I feel Democrats have really forgotten. Had COVID not happened, Trump would have been reelected easy.
Oh, for sure.
They completely have forgotten the fact that the reason why Trump won in the first place is he played into the WASP existential fear about whiteness becoming a minority, but he also was able to allow for apathy to be pervasive amongst white middle class millennials. There's a lot of political apathy at this point from that demographic, and Trump, he allows it to happen. Because he's such a terrible and divisive figure, many people that would tune into politics felt that they had to turn away from it because it became too divisive for them. And so the only reason that these people even came out to vote come 2020 was because the situation became so awful thanks to COVID being so bad and universally affecting everyone's lives that people decided that they would vote Biden in just to make sure that Trump didn't win. And the writing was on the wall from that moment, that they couldn't use that momentum because even in the general, you had Trump losing in a lot of areas that other Republicans were winning in at the lower levels, really indicating that it wasn't Biden was getting a swell of support for the Democrats, but Trump was so bad that Republicans would sooner vote Biden over him and then vote red straight down ballot.
Because if I'm remembering the statistics correctly, I'm pretty sure 7% of Republicans voted for Biden in 2020.
Which is a sizable amount.
It's a lot.
But that doesn't translate to 7% of Republicans becoming Democrats. And I feel the Democratic leadership vastly overestimated their sway with this political demographic. And to be honest, they deserve it. I'm going to come out and say it right now. The Democrats deserve the losses that they got this week because of their complete and utter unwillingness to see the fact that they don't have the white middle class demographic like they think they do.
Well, I'm going to come out with a different perspective on this. Does it really hurt them to lose? I'm genuine about this. Does it hurt the Democratic politicians to be on the losing side?
Depends. The ones that are actually running, yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
The ones that are running, but the ones that are in power.
In my opinion, no. It doesn't help them because it allows them to do what they did during the Trump era, which was allowing them to build up some form of steam that they really, really overestimated that was going to come in 2020, was that if Republicans are in power and they do all the bad shit, Democrats get to come in and say, oh my God, this is so terrible. We would never do something like that. Don't you see how this is so terrible? Please vote us in because we will definitely make sure it doesn't become worse.
But does that really take much effort? Because
it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much effort for them to come out and say this is so terrible, vote us in because we won't make it worse, because the operative word here is making it worse. They didn't say we'll make it better. We just said we won't make it worse. Meaning they are just interested in stopping the bleeding, not healing the arm.
Because this is what this strategy leads to. It leads to something awful happening. Them saying that they won't repeat those mistakes. Them completely messing up and not bringing any traction into the political party whatsoever, thus demoralizing the base that we stand in. So that way we don't pull in votes. The other side completely taking power again, them doing something awful, and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat, and this continuous cycle is not sustainable at all.
Yeah,
And it only benefits the people who are a part of it.
It's not sustainable because we are now seeing, thanks to Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, what that really breeds. It breeds Democrats who are just in the corporate lobby like their Republican counterparts, but they have become used to that they don't even want to become controlled opposition anymore. They just want to be there as some type of, not controlled opposition, but they're more just like there.
Because let's be honest here. Is there anyone in the Senate who got in there because they want to help out people that live in, like, that they want to help their constituency? I can maybe name two.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders.
And Ro Khanna.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it.
I would say, what's his name? Bald guy. He's black. He's light skinned. Ran for president. Cory Booker. I would say he does actually genuinely. He is, however, he is a lib, and he is, as ineffectual as libs come, but I do believe his heart is in the right place.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're not here to downplay Democrats. We're here to downplay their strategy and how this is completely their fault.
Yeah, it is absolutely their fault, in my opinion. Like, they need to really, really take a page from the Republicans, and they need to run candidates that light fire under people's asses.
I mean, for example, like 2018, AOC was a massive upset. I think she upset, was it like the third highest sitting member of the House or something like that?
Something like that, but you have to remember, that wasn't from the Democratic establishment. She was an upset, and that means she's an outlier. She was not, part of the general trend.
Well, she has established a new trend where more people like her are coming in, because, I mean, people like her, like Justice Dems, they multiplied, I think they doubled in 2020.
Which is good, but it's incremental, which is good. Incremental steps are good, but it doesn't cut to the real issue, which is that the party leadership of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, they are not strategizing to run good candidates down ballot.
And I see what you're saying. There's like an incremental solution is good, but leadership itself needs to take action now. I think that's what you're trying to
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Because for as much as we rail about conservatives and how terrible they are and how they are terrible for politics, they are geniuses at political strategy. They have strategies that they've been running for 50 years, and they're still out here winning. Why? Because they know what to do. If someone's not working, get them out of there. We'll put someone new. We'll put someone that will be more inflammatory, that will light the fire under conservative asses, get independents to feel that fire, and have the independents run to them. That's what conservatives do, and Democrats fail constantly. And it is infuriating to see this. We are now really, really at a point where we are seeing fascism become more and more a politically viable option in American politics, and the Democrats do nothing to actually truly fight it back. They do not run the wall-to-wall propaganda showing why this is terrible. They do not fight back against culture war issues in any meaningful way. They do not run discourse. They do not do anything to help their constituency in any meaningful way to galvanize them to come out and try and support them. They do nothing. All they do is rest on the laurels of whatever win they get and try to coast off of that like they're that A student in school that didn't study and is really just coasting off of natural intelligence before they hit the brick wall known as college. That's what they are, and it is terrible and it's laughable that they consider this a continually viable strategy when it is shown that they fail at every single angle when they could do better. They have the facts on their side. They have policy positions on their side that are actually good, that a majority of Americans actually agree with. But they don't do anything with it. They will sooner let these Republicans run circles around them with culture war issues all the goddamn time. And they don't do anything but just try to lazily rebuff these culture war issues instead of turning it on its head on Republicans. They don't do anything of the sort. And it's so frustrating to see it happen. Because we get some progressive agendas, like defunding the police in Minneapolis, and what do the Democrats do? They hightail it for the fucking hills, running away from an actual progressive policy and backing it. While yes, I do understand though that defunding the police was not a necessarily good progressive strategy because in Black communities they do not want to defund the police because the police is really one of the only agencies that they have to protect them from the encroach of crime. The fact that Democrats didn't even try to entertain potentially communicating alternatives to defunding the police, but doing something to get reform really does show just how much they are allergic to good political strategy.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that, honestly.
It's so frustrating seeing this for years. I have been watching the Democratic Party since I've been 8 years old. I've been following politics since I've been 8 years old. And I've seen this strategy by the Democrats since I was 8. And it has not changed at all. This happened in the Obama era. We were winning. We were on top. We had the world and we squandered it. We did nothing. Obama did not get anything done like he promised to do because the Democrats continue to do the same thing, which is squander every advantage they get. They let the Republicans nickel and dime them down over and over until the Republicans become just as big as they do, and the Republicans turn around and bitch slap them to the ground and then stomp on them. And they just let it happen. Why? Why do they let this happen? Because they make money. The party leadership makes money off of being controlled opposition, and because they are a capitalist institution, meaning that they do not actually care for lower class and working class people, and so class consciousness is completely antithetical to what they achieve. So they purposely kneecap themselves so they don't achieve much political power because it knows that it would ensure more progressive people to join the political party and advocate for change, which would then run contrary to their corporate masters. That is why it's happening. And I know it's happening, and I've known it's been happening, but it's still frustrating to see it happen in real time.
Yeah.
I was hopeful for these midterms. I had optimism the midterms wouldn't go too bad. But this is really opening my eyes to the fact that we are in trouble. I'm not trying to be doomer here because doomer politics are not good, they are not productive, and they don't do anything to fix it. I'm not trying to be doomer here.
Yeah, we specifically advocated to not be doomer last episode, but
So
we need to just...
we need to be real, though, about the Democrats.
They are pretty much just controlled opposition. That's all that they stand for.
Exactly.
The only thing that they know how to do is lose.
Yeah.
Because so many times, like, to bring up your previous point, Obama was supposed to be the hope and change of America. He was supposed to make America better. And we got Obamacare. We got an extension for healthcare for children staying with their parents. What else did we get? We got nothing.
We got drone pilots murdering Yemenis children in mass.
Yeah, and who gets blamed for that the most? Obama does, even though Trump did it more.
But the fact that Obama even allowed it to happen in the first place just goes to show how the Democrats don't do anything truly progressive. And when they do, you have to drag them kicking and screaming to do it,
and I mean,
like with gay marriage.
God, to think that only because when did that get
2015.
legalized? Jesus Christ, what has taken them so long? That could not have been 2015.
It was 2015 was when that Supreme Court decision came through, and that is when Democrats were like, oh, it's now fully okay to be pro-gay. That means right now, because the Supreme Court made it legal, that meant the corporations were like, well, if the Supreme Court says it is, well, we'll start rolling out the rainbow logos every June to put on Twitter. And the Democrats were like, "Idy-ho, okay, gay people, you're all good. Sorry for not defending you for the past fucking 100 years. But that's water under the bridge now, right?
There's that. I'm coming at this as a straight person. That is absolutely infuriating to hear.
Yeah.
To hear that only recently got legalized.
Yeah, I mean,
6 years ago in the age of the United States, that is laughable.
Yeah,
that is absolutely laughable. That the greatest country on earth only legalized gay marriage 6 years ago.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's still kind of one of the more progressive aspects of America compared to the rest of the world, which says something about the world. But what I really want from the Democrats, and I feel that when I say this, I'm not really talking to the Democratic establishment because they obviously won't listen to me. I'm talking to the general liberal, independent, or even conservative voter that wants to see change. If you want to see change, you will get it through the Democratic Party. But you need to be able to build your own coalition from the ground up. And you need to use that coalition to gain power politically in your own local area first. Once you have done that, look for like-minded individuals within positions of power like you. Build coalitions across the country. And then together, work and fund each other up to the top. That is truly how we'll get the Democrats to know what we want and where we stand. Because relying on them to funnel in candidates has clearly shown to be an absolute failure. Because they do not bring in real candidates that actually inspire people.
People really underestimate how much power local elections truly have. Because if you can completely liberalize an entire county, that's still a lot.
Here's the thing. The Republicans have been doing this since the 50s. They've been doing this since the 50s. They knew the power of local elections because they had smart political acumen on their side. Democrats have the same resources, yet they don't use it. Well, I'm saying, you know what? We'll have to force them to use it. We need to, as the average common Americans that want to see true progressive change, we need to be the ones that step up. We can no longer trust the Democratic Party to field us good candidates. So we need to become the candidates. And that doesn't necessarily mean you just have to run for office. That just means becoming more of an activist. Whether it means going to a bit more protest, or going to more city council meetings and speaking your mind, emailing your senators more, or hell, doing what we do and creating a podcast and shouting into the void to however many viewers, how minuscule they may be now, because who knows where it could be in a couple years. What we need right now is for the average common American to stand up and fight for ourselves, because the Democratic Party is not doing it. We need to make the Democratic Party the progressive party that we want to see them be. Because sitting back and screaming at them on a podcast or yelling at them through quote tweets on Twitter isn't it. We need to do actual praxis. We need to support each other in our fight for better working rights, racial equality, gender equality, sexual liberation, anti-capitalism, or not even anti-capitalism, but just better progressive elements of capitalism, and other things like more maternity leave and paternity leave, finally decoupling insurance from your job and allowing everyone to have affordable not just affordable healthcare, but affordable medical treatment. We need to get the pharmaceutical industry to stop making prescription medication so goddamn expensive because people's lives are on the line. And as we know, people will pay anything to survive. And we need to make it as affordable as we can so more people survive. We need to make those changes happen ourselves. The Democratic establishment has proven that they don't want to do it because they're in the pocket of these corporations. So we need to make them do it. We need to support each other. And so I'm saying this now, that if you have any plans or any ideas of potentially doing something political, whether it's running for political office, writing a letter, whether it's going to your city councilman or wherever, do it. You have nothing to lose. You should do it. And because who knows where you'll end up from trying.
And you never realize how much political power a single citizen has until you get the ball rolling.
Exactly. One vote in a sea of millions sounds minuscule. But that one vote is one person. And that one person has infinite reach.
Some political elections nearly win on like 100 votes. That is important, that those small elections are won by the right people.
And I would say, don't just focus on elections either, because political power doesn't just come from the elections. It comes from the people that talk about the elections, the people that talk about the policy, the media sphere surrounding politics is what also counts as political power. Yeah. So don't just focus on, I'm just but one vote in a sea of millions, because you're more than that.
Though if you do listen to this podcast, you are legally required to vote. Yes. That is a legal requirement to listen to this podcast. You have to vote.
Yes, please vote. Please, for the love of God, please vote. But don't just see political participation as just voting. Because while you can see yourself as 1 in a million votes, you are also one person amongst millions. And you have your own independent relationships with people that no one else has. And those relationships can translate into a movement that only you and your skills can bring to the table, because your unique relationships with people and how they will affect other people and their relationships with other people and so on and so forth, that is what allows for a political movement to happen. That is what will allow us to see political change in this Democratic Party that has become all too accustomed to being controlled opposition. We need to cause the upsets within the party. We need to primary the establishment when politically tactical, but we do need to primary them. We need to actually show out even more in force when we vote, and vote for people that aren't just establishment, but vote for people that are pushing the envelope in the right direction. That doesn't mean vote for anyone that rails against the Democratic Party. Be smart about it. If they have a true political strategy that is actually viable, which is entirely up to you doing your own political research, however that may be, to determining that fact, you should do it and vote for them. That's what we need, more than anything. So this is not a segment that will end on doomerism. This is a segment that will hopefully give you a high on hopium in believing that we can turn it around. Yes, the Democrats suck now, but they don't have to suck forever, because they're old people. They will be supplanted by new people, and we should be those new people that come in and hopefully make this country better.
Yeah, we here are completely anti-doomer, and do want to emphasize that that is the way to Republicans winning.
Yes.
Because the more we are doomer, the less we go out to vote. And the less we vote, the less we get, or not even vote, like Shiny said, the more that we're politically active, the less that we're politically active, the more that we let room for Republicans to win.
Yeah. And in my opinion, this isn't just about Republicans winning. Because not all Republicans are like the terrible people that we talk about on this podcast. What we're really trying to stop is the wave of conservatives that care for no one. They do not care for their constituents. They do not care for general humanity, and they do not care for democracy. They care about power and money. Nothing more. That's all they care about. Those are the people that are trying to run this country. They are the ones that sow division amongst political lines. They are the ones that sow division amongst class lines, racial lines, so on and so forth. Those are the true people that we need to be working against. And so I posit this to everyone: Democrat, Republican, progressive, whatever. Be the change that you want to see. The current status quo is broken and has been broken for decades. And we've been screaming into the void for decades saying that it's broken. But now more than ever, we need to do something to change that. And to change that requires us as people to become more active. Because once we all become more active political agents, we will start to see the change that we want to see. And when you see that change, you'll realize how much easier your life has become. And how, if you hadn't, and how when you weren't participating, you realize just how little control you felt over your life. But when you actually bring real political power to the table, to the policies that you want to see happen, you realize just how much better your life is. And so that's what we want to end this podcast episode by saying, is reclaim that power. And know that while your life may be shit now, it doesn't have to be shit, because there's always a way to change it. And it's not something that can always be done by yourself. It can be done with others. And to fix it with others, we need to coalition build.
Well, as much as I enjoyed having a whole hour having a screaming match with Republicans that aren't listening, I think that was a really good discussion about politics that happened. I think
Yeah,
we should definitely end the stream there. It's a
yeah,
very good 2.5 hour episode. Definitely grateful to the viewers who stuck around.
yes. Thank you to all viewers that stuck around. Once again, you guys are amazing. And honestly, it's amazing to have whatever little viewers we have. It's amazing to have you guys listening and just overall supporting the channel. Like, we really appreciate it.
And we are seeing substantial growth. I mean, literally one video got 17 views in a day.
Yeah, which for us is huge. 17 views in a single day is huge, and we're really thankful for that. So
we're going to be taking more steps to up our game. We're probably going to engage a little more on the community tab a bit more in these coming weeks.
yeah,
Try to get our channel growing. So you'll probably be hearing a lot more from us in the near future.
yeah, we'll definitely try to post more on social media. So please like, comment, and subscribe for the YouTube channel. Please follow and subscribe on Twitch. And please like, retweet, and share and follow all of our social media accounts. You can usually find it at some variation of Worldwide Wednesday, Worldwide Wednesday Podcast, WW Podcast, Shiny Sovereign Show, whatever. We usually have links to all of that in the description of our videos. But overall, thank you.
And you can always catch us at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. This has been the 5th episode of the Worldwide Wednesday podcast. I'm your co-host, Sovereign.
And I'm Shiny, and we'll see you all next week.